Chapter 1003. Although both were organized by New Flyer and were related to the magic machine industry, the Science Magic Machine Industry Forum and the Magic Machine Industry Standards Conference were two completely different gatherings. In the Magic Machine Industry Forum, the representatives of the various countries and chambers of commerce that participated in the conference mainly discussed various information related to the magic machine industry and reached various cooperation agreements. The main topic was business. In the Magic Machine Industry Standards Conference, although the representatives of the various countries and chambers of commerce that participated in the conference, the topics of discussion were more focused on the various standards and regulations related to the magic machine industry, as well as a series of research discussions. Compared to most of the higher-ups of New Flyer, who placed more importance on obtaining more cooperation from the industry forum, Sue placed more importance on the Magic Machine Industry Standards Conference that was held a month after the Magic Machine Industry Forum. Because in this conference, the relevant standards of the magic machine industry on the continent would be formulated and promoted to all the countries and chambers of commerce related to the magic machine industry on the signs, requiring them to implement this standard. Of course, these standards were all set by New Flyer and no other country or chamber of commerce had the right to question them. Therefore, Sue placed great importance on this conference because he needed to formulate sufficiently detailed and strict standards in advance while New Flyer was still in an absolute leading position. This way, it would be easier to control the development of the magic machine industry and avoid wasting a lot of manpower and precious time because of the difference in standards. In addition, New Flyer didn't have the sole authority to decide on the rules and regulations of the magic machine industry. After all, every country on the signs had its own unique situation. Even if they wanted to unify the rules and regulations of the magic machine industry, they had to consider the differences between the different countries. For this reason, New Flyer took the initiative to propose the establishment of a Magic Machine Industry Management Committee. It was dedicated to formulating the rules and regulations of the magic machine industry, and at the same time, it was responsible for strengthening the relationship between all the chambers of commerce related to the magic machine industry on the continent. This thing was actually similar to the trade union and sorcerers' guild that existed in Signs. However, due to the rapid development of the magic machine industry in Signs over the past few years, the establishment of the Association of Magic Machine Industry seemed to be very powerful and influential. On the other hand, because of New Flyer's suggestion, the Magic Industry Federation further approved a new standard for all personnel involved in the magic industry. For example, an ordinary skilled worker would be divided into 5 levels, followed by a senior title and a specialist title. At the same time, a special group of people involved in the magic industry, namely the mages, was also divided into different levels. However, unlike ordinary workers, who were categorized according to their skill level, magicians were first divided into 2 categories. One was the basic magician technicians who specialized in drawing magicians, and the other was the researchers who were responsible for research related to magic machines. In these 2 categories, the technicians were also divided into 5 levels, which respectively represented the level of magic arrays that the magician could draw and the quality of the magic arrays that he could draw. The researchers were divided into beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels, followed by specialist and master levels, which respectively represented the depth of their research on magic machines. Basically, these levels were determined with reference to New Flyer's own classification of the mages in the Chamber of Commerce. There wasn't much of a difference. After this classification, a very strange phenomenon was reflected. That is, even if you are a mage with a very high level of magic, you may not be able to match up to a mage with a lower level of magic than you when it comes to magic machine professional skill level assessment. And because the magic machine industry was flourishing in Signs, people's attitudes toward magicians had also changed greatly. In the past, people judged whether a magician was powerful or not based on whether his magic level was high enough. If the magic level was high enough, it meant that the magician could use higher-level magic, which would naturally make him more powerful and receive more respect. But now, if a mage wanted to be valued and respected by the people, they had to be recognized in the magic machine profession. Otherwise, what was the use of having a high magic level? Unless you were a magus, how much use could you have? Besides, even if you were a magus, weren't you still killed by the military magic machines of New Flyer? With this change in mentality, some things that were taken for granted in the past gradually changed. And some people who had always been high and mighty had no choice but to lower their high heads. On the fourth day of the Magic Machine Industry Standards Conference, Sue, who had just finished a discussion on the differences in protection measures for different countries' industry standards, welcomed a special guest. "Hey, Sir Alex Ferguson, it's been a few years since we last met. You still look very spirited, congratulations." Sue chuckled as he greeted Sir Alex Ferguson. Sir Alex Ferguson stared at Sue for a long time, and couldn't help but smile bitterly as he shook his head. Ever since Magus Levin Hasek had died in the New Flight Commerce main base 5 years ago, the Sorcerers Guild, which had publicly broken off relations with New Flyer and even called for all magicians on the continent to boycott New Flyer, had instantly quieted down. In the past 5 years, New Flyer had led all the countries on the continent in developing the magic machine industry, and the Sorcerers Guild had never raised any objections. They didn't even do anything extra apart from some fixed tasks every year, such as the mage level assessment. Many people thought that the Sorcerers Guild had clearly recognized a fact from the death of Magus Levin Hasek and the easy defeat of the Mana Magic Kingdom at the hands of New Flyer's guards, and that was that New Flyer was no longer something that the Sorcerers Guild could threaten or even govern. Thus, they naturally chose to keep a low profile, which was a very wise choice. Now that 5 years had passed, the Sorcerers Guild's reputation in the signs continued to decline with the rapid development of the magic machine industry led by New Flyer. Even the Magicians' Union headquarters' control over the Sorcerers Guild branches in the various countries was becoming weaker and weaker. The reason was that the integration of the Sorcerers Guild and the magic machine industry could bring about huge benefits, and the Magicians' Union headquarters had always been hostile towards New Flyer, which made it very difficult for the Sorcerers Guild to participate. Thus, the Sorcerers Guild branches in many countries simply discussed cooperation with various magic machine-related companies in private and ignored the orders of the Magicians' Union headquarters. Seeing that the situation was becoming more and more intense, the Magicians' Union headquarters Council of Elders finally couldn't sit still. They knew that if this continued, the Sorcerers Guild that had thousands of years of history in the signs might really be eliminated in this era. And if they didn't want to be eliminated, they had to take the initiative to change. Thus, after 5 years, Sir Alex Ferguson was once again sent to meet Sue. But at first glance, Sir Alex Ferguson could tell that compared to Sue 5 years ago, the current Sue's level of magic had undoubtedly improved by leaps and bounds. 5 years ago, Sue's strength was about the same as Sir Alex Ferguson's. But now, Sue's faint aura and the natural magical waves surrounding him showed that his magical strength had reached an extremely high level, which was more than a level higher than Sir Alex Ferguson's. Before Sir Alex Ferguson came here, he had heard rumors that Sue even had the strength of a 5-star great mage and was only 1 step away from becoming an archmage. At that time, he didn't believe it because 5 years ago, Sue was only a 2-star great mage. 5 years later, he had advanced to a 5-star great mage? That was a little too exaggerated. But now that he saw it with his own eyes, he couldn't help but believe it. Thus, he could only smile bitterly. 5 years had passed, and not only had New Flyer become an unshakable giant in the Magicians' Union headquarters, even Sue himself had become a top mage that people could only look up to. Now, when Sir Alex Ferguson faced Sue, he didn't have the arrogant attitude and condescending attitude that he had with the Magicians' Union headquarters 5 years ago. So much so that his face couldn't help but show a trace of humility. "Chairman Sue, I haven't seen you in 5 years, and you've become more and more mature." Sir Alex Ferguson laughed. "I thought you would refuse my request to see you this time, but I didn't expect you to agree so readily." "Why would I refuse?" Sue shrugged. "An old friend is willing to see me after 5 years. Why would I refuse?" Sir Alex Ferguson laughed dryly, paused, and continued, "Well, I know that Chairman Sue has always been a person who doesn't like to talk nonsense, so I'll be direct. Chairman Sue, regarding the proposal that new flyer proposed yesterday, regarding the professional level assessment of magic machinery for the mages involved in the magic machine industry, I would like to propose a suggestion on behalf of the Magicians' Union headquarters." Sue looked at Sir Alex Ferguson with a smile that wasn't a smile. It seemed that the Magicians' Union headquarters finally couldn't hold back and wanted to do something. Chapter 1004. Chairman Sue, our Sorcerers' Guild, has set the rules for determining the level of mages on the continent since 1300 years ago. After more than 1,300 years of accumulation, we already have a lot of experience and strong reserves in this area. Therefore, I think that if we can cooperate on the level assessment of mages in magic machines, it will definitely save a lot of effort. What do you think? Sir Alex Ferguson said with a sincere face. Sue smiled and shook his head. "Sir Alex Ferguson, I think you're mistaken about something. The level assessment of magic machines mainly evaluates the mage's mastery of the knowledge and skills related to magic machines. This is different from the assessment of magic level conducted by the Sorcerers' Guild. But in the end, it's still related to the mages and the magic they master, isn't it?" Sir Alex Ferguson retorted. "Chairman Sue, you have to believe that our Sorcerers' Guild has more than 1,000 years of history in this area. We have a lot of experience in any assessment related to magic, and the division is very precise. If you cooperate with us, I can guarantee that you will immediately get the most professional and detailed assessment standards, and you won't have to slowly fumble around on your own. Yes, I agree with the Sorcerers' Guild's expertise in magic. But in terms of knowledge related to magic machines, I'm afraid it's not good enough, right?" Sue took out a document from the table and handed it to Sir Alex Ferguson. "This is a research report on the strength of magic arrays and the compatibility of 13 types of steel. It's one of the standards we use to judge whether a mage is proficient in drawing magic arrays on magic machines. I think, not only Sir Alex Ferguson, I'm afraid that not many people in the Magicians' Union headquarters will be able to understand it." "You're saying that we can't understand it?" Sir Alex Ferguson frowned slightly, and his face was a little ugly. Although he didn't have much knowledge about magic machines, as an archmage, how could he not understand anything related to magic arrays? He took the document with a little dissatisfaction and carefully flipped through it. But when he flipped through the first page, his expression changed from anger and dissatisfaction to doubt and confusion. By the time he finished reading the research report, his face was filled with confusion. Sir Alex Ferguson held the research report in his hand and didn't know what to say for a long time. He had to admit that he really couldn't understand this research report. Not to mention the various strange steel models, steel toughness, magic resistance, and other data that he didn't understand at all. Even the magic arrays that were used as examples in the report, he didn't understand the use and principles. This was simply beyond his expectations. If the Magicians' Union headquarters is willing to change their mind and cooperate with our Chamber of Commerce, that's a good thing, and I welcome it. Looking at Sir Alex Ferguson's expression, Sue smiled and said, "But Sir Alex Ferguson, Please go back and tell the other people in the Magicians Union headquarters that although the magic machine industry is closely related to the field of magic that you are familiar with, it is a completely new industry. If you can't put down your pride and seriously study it, then don't think that you can casually participate in it. Su Yi's words weren't polite, but Sir Alex Ferguson's face turned green and white, and he couldn't refute it at all. If even an archmage like him couldn't understand this seemingly ordinary research report, then there was no way the other magicians in the Magicians Union headquarters would be able to understand it. Of course, he couldn't give up his mission so easily. After thinking for a while, he said, "All right, Chairman Su, I admit that we don't know enough about magic machines. But I think that there is still a possibility for us to cooperate. At the very least, our Sorcerers Guild has the most complete ranking system for magicians. If you borrow our hands to do the ranking system for magic machines, you can save a lot of manpower and money, and also save a lot of time." "Yes, I don't deny this point." Su Yi nodded. "But I still have to say the same thing. If you want to cooperate, you can, but first you have to put down your pride and properly study the magic machine industry before you come. Also, even if you want to cooperate, I want our new flyer to have the absolute dominant position. Are you willing to agree to this point?" This. Sir Alex Ferguson hesitated again. Before this, why did the Sorcerers Guild have such a high reputation in the signs? Other than having a long history, the most important thing was that the Sorcerers Guild had the ranking system for all the magicians in the signs. Furthermore, they had the recognition of all the people and countries in the signs. Therefore, if a magician wanted to stand out, the first thing they needed to do was to obtain a corresponding rating from the Magicians Guild. In this way, it was equivalent to the Sorcerers Guild completely controlling the lifeline of all the magicians in the continent. They had no choice but to listen to the arrangements of the Sorcerers Guild. The reason why the Sorcerers Guild was so hostile to New Flyer and didn't hesitate to completely break off relations with them was because New Flyer wanted to use the promotion of the magic machine industry to establish a new ranking system for magicians that was completely independent of the Sorcerers Guild. New Flyer's method was tantamount to directly stealing the Sorcerers Guild's lifeline. How could the Sorcerers Guild ignore this? However, when all the restrictions and obstructions the Sorcerers Guild had against New Flyer failed, and even the last resort of sending a magus to attack New Flyer failed, this caused the Sorcerers Guild to completely lose the ability to compete with New Flyer. Therefore, after 5 years of silence, the Sorcerers Guild clearly understood the unstoppable trend of the magic machine industry in the signs. They had no choice but to lower their heads and take the initiative to cooperate with New Flyer. The Magicians Union headquarters taking the initiative to cooperate with New Flyer in the ranking system was already a huge concession. However, now Su Yi actually wanted New Flyer to take the absolute lead in the cooperation. This was basically treating the Magicians Union headquarters as a vassal. How could Sir Alex Ferguson agree to this? Chairman Su, as for who will be the leader, we can discuss this in the future. First, we need to confirm if you are willing to cooperate with us. Sir Alex Ferguson didn't directly reject the idea, but instead changed the topic and asked, "Of course I am. Didn't I say it from the beginning?" Su Yi spread out his hands and said very calmly, "Good, then I will convey your attitude. As for the specifics of the cooperation, I think we can slowly discuss it in depth in the future." Sir Alex Ferguson nodded and suddenly changed the topic. "But before that, I think you won't reject our other requests for cooperation, right?" "Tell me about it." "This is the letter of intent for cooperation that I brought. Please take a look." Sir Alex Ferguson was obviously prepared. He took out a thick document from his bag and handed it over. Letter of intent for cooperation? Su Yi was slightly startled, but then he couldn't help but laugh. The Sorcerers Guild taking the initiative to send a letter of intent for cooperation to other organizations. This hasn't happened in hundreds of years, right? Sui took the letter of intent and casually flipped through it. He saw that the Sorcerers Guild hoped to be able to buy a series of more basic magic machine-related technologies from New Flyer. At the same time, they hoped to cooperate with New Flyer and use the Sorcerers Guild's huge magician resources to create a professional magic machine technology research institute. The first request was of course not a problem. After all, New Flyer had already made a lot of basic magic machine-related technologies available to the public. Moreover, the prices were clearly marked. Anyone with money could buy it. The second request was very questionable. That's right. Although the Sorcerers Guild's reputation on the continent was not as good as it used to be, there was no doubt that they still had a huge amount of magician resources. If New Flyer could really cooperate with the Sorcerers Guild to establish a professional magic machine technology research institute, then as long as both sides worked together, they would definitely be able to greatly improve magic machine-related technologies. But even if Sui used his toes to think, he knew that the Magicians' Union headquarters would definitely not wholeheartedly organize magicians to invest in magic machine-related technologies like he wanted. Their biggest wish was to surpass New Flyer in terms of technology and replace New Flyer. Sui didn't reject the idea of other organizations surpassing New Flyer in terms of magic machine-related technologies. He even hoped that such a situation would happen. But this wasn't the time, and it definitely couldn't be the Sorcerers Guild that had bad intentions. But after thinking for a moment, Sui slowly nodded his head. Sure. Of course, it's not a problem if you want to buy these technologies. But there are a few technologies that our Chamber of Commerce doesn't state that we are willing to sell. Of course we will pay a sufficient price. Sir Alex Ferguson immediately said. Chairman Sue, you have to believe that our Sorcerers Guild has such a long history on the continent. We definitely have some capital. For example, this. Seeing Sir Alex Ferguson take out a thin booklet, Sui couldn't help but frown slightly. This guy, if he has something to say, why doesn't he say it all at once? Why does he have to squeeze it out bit by bit? What a waste of time. But after taking this thin booklet and opening it to read, Sui couldn't help but sit up straight. His eyes widened slightly. If what this booklet said was true, then it was really worth a lot. Chapter 1005. The booklet was very thin and only had a few pages. There weren't many things recorded in it, or it could be said that it was just like a catalog. There wasn't much substantial content at all. However, the content recorded in it made Sui unable to help but stare at it with rapt attention. There were about 5 things recorded in it. The first 3 were introductions to magic. They weren't magic in the general sense, but rather related introductions. It could even be said that they were rumors. For example, the first introduction said that about 200 years ago, there was an unknown great magician in the signs who was researching fire magic. He suddenly had the idea of tying a magic crystal around his waist. Then, he directly absorbed the fire magic elements in the surrounding space into the magic crystal. Then, through the magic in his body, he resonated with the magic in the magic crystal. As a result, although this great magician wasn't directly killed by the explosion caused by the magic crystal because of his powerful strength, it caused his magic to become chaotic, and he was seriously injured. After his injuries were healed, his magic level had greatly decreased. At most, he could only recover to the level of an 8th level magician. This regretful great magician recorded this matter and handed it over to the Magicians' Union headquarters. He hoped that through the Sorcerers Guild, the news would spread and prevent other magicians from making the same mistake. The second introduction was related to an ordinary magician who wasn't famous. It was said that this magician was an expert in wind magic. Moreover, he liked to take a different approach when researching wind magic. When ordinary magicians used wind magic to fly, They would use wind magic elements to surround their body and then use it as a driving force to fly. However, this magician took a different approach and thought of another method. When he flew, not only did he use wind magic elements to surround his body, he also used wind magic to form a whirlpool that constantly rotated at high speed behind him. In this way, his flying speed was much faster than ordinary magicians. However, the disadvantage was that this consumed a lot of magic. This caused his flying distance to be far less than when using normal flying magic. The third introduction was only a sketch. From this sketch, it seemed to be a magic flying tool. According to the words beside it, it was a magical battleship. This magic warship seems to be similar to the magic warships used by the elves thousands of years ago. Sue pointed at the picture and asked Sir Alex Ferguson. This is a magic battleship developed by human mages during the War of Species to fight against the magic battleships of the elves. It's very similar, but there are still many differences, said Sir Alex Ferguson. So, the Magicians' Union headquarters still has information about these magic battleships? That's right. Sir Alex Ferguson nodded with a smug look on his face. The Union headquarters even has a prototype of a magic battleship from 2,000 years ago. Chairman Sue, I'm sure you'll be very interested in it, right? Sue glanced at him and felt a little amused. If there were 3 introductions about magic in this booklet, the one he didn't care about the most was this magic battleship that Sir Alex Ferguson was very proud of. Instead, it was the first 2 introductions that gave him a lot of inspiration and help. I'm very interested, but it's only limited to the fact that it's an antique with a lot of collection value. Sue smiled. Antique? Sir Alex Ferguson looked at Sue in shock. Chairman Sue, this is a magic battleship. You're only treating it as an antique? Of course it's an antique. It's already 3,000 years old. If I don't treat it as an antique, what do you want me to treat it as? It's the crystallization of our human mages' wisdom during the War of Species. It's the greatest magic masterpiece in our sign's thousands of years of history. You're only treating it as an antique. Sir Alex Ferguson waved his hands agitatedly, his face red with anger. Sue shrugged his shoulders. Sir Alex Ferguson, I have to remind you. If the level of mages on signs is not even comparable to the level of mages during the War of Species 3,000 years ago, then it's a tragedy. Strictly speaking, this is actually a dereliction of duty on the part of your Sorcerers' Guild. Sir Alex Ferguson couldn't help but point at Sue angrily. His lips trembled for a while, but he still forced himself to put down his arms and snorted with dissatisfaction. Sue smiled and picked up the booklet. He flipped to the last page. Compared to the antique magic battleship, I'd like to ask, does your guild headquarters really have these 2 things? There were only 2 simple sketches on the last page. One was a diagram of a magic array, and the other was a very strange-looking magic tool. This magic array was very strange because it was different from most magic arrays that only guided one type of magic element. It was marked with 4 different types of magic elements at the same time. It seemed like it was an extremely special magic array that could guide 4 different types of magic elements at the same time. With Sue's current level as a 5-star mage, of course he could calculate that this magic array had a certain degree of feasibility. However, other than the sketches, there was no other corresponding magic array data, so he couldn't immediately replicate it to test it out. On the other hand, if one were to take a closer look at the odd-looking magic tool, one would discover that the magic tool itself was also a strange magic array. Moreover, there were also countless tiny magic arrays drawn on the magic tool. Sue calculated in his heart and found that if all the magic arrays on this magic tool were to operate at the same time, it would most likely cause the magic space in the center of the magic tool to collapse due to the conflict between various types of magic elements. The power of the collapse of the magic space was extremely terrifying. Although the collapse of the magic space in the center of the magic tool only covered a very small area, once it was released, the power would not be much worse than a normal forbidden spell. Therefore, this strange-looking magic tool could be seen as a terrifying bomb. Seeing that Sue was interested in these two things, Sir Alex Ferguson calmed down the anger that surged up when Sue belittled the magic warship. He composed himself and shook his head, saying, "These two things are listed as extremely dangerous magic research by the Union headquarters, so they are explicitly prohibited. The headquarters doesn't have the real thing. Of course. The relevant research materials are now in the headquarters." "Is that so?" Sue stretched out his finger and traced the magic arrays drawn on the two sketches. After thinking for a while, he asked Sir Alex Ferguson, "In other words, if our Chamber of Commerce is willing to transfer the few technologies in the letter of intent, you are willing to use these to trade?" Seeing that Sue actually showed a willingness to trade, Sir Alex Ferguson was overjoyed, but his face showed a trace of a reserved smile as he replied, "This also depends on which technologies Chairman Sue agrees to transfer to us. You have to know that the things recorded in this book are the secrets of our Magicians' Union headquarters." "Secrets?" Sue laughed and threw the booklet back to Sir Alex Ferguson. "Since it's a secret, then forget it." Sir Alex Ferguson took the booklet blankly. "Chairman Sue, what do you mean by this?" "It's very simple. If you are sincere in cooperating, then we can discuss it. If not, then please leave." Sue waved his hand and said, "You." Sir Alex Ferguson's barely suppressed anger suddenly surged up again. However, his rationality made him have no choice but to suppress his anger once again. Sir Alex Ferguson took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He said to Sue in a deep voice, "Chairman Sue, let's not waste time talking nonsense. I can see that you are very interested in the things written in this book, and I can also confirm that these things are useful to New Flyer. Since it's like this, then I'll be straightforward. Our Magicians' Union headquarters is willing to use these secrets to exchange with New Flyer for the magic machine technology required in the letter of intent. What do you think?" Sue glanced at the letter of intent on the table and casually nodded his head. "We can trade, but the letter of intent requires certain technical information that I can't give you. For example, any technical information related to military magic machines is strictly regulated by the Chamber of Commerce. It can't be broken because of one trade, so it can't be transferred." "Then what about the other technical information?" "As for the others, I can consider it." "That's good." Sir Alex Ferguson pondered for a moment and asked, "Then Chairman Sue, what if we want to obtain technical information related to military magic machines? I think that since you are here, you must have inquired about the rules of our Chamber of Commerce regarding the transfer of military magic machine technology. If you want to obtain these technologies, it won't be difficult to upgrade your industrial system first. Oh right, your Sorcerers Guild isn't a national organization, so you can't directly obtain it. But that doesn't matter, you still have the Mana Magic Kingdom." Hearing this answer, Sir Alex Ferguson's eyes suddenly lit up. "Chairman Sue, you mean, the Mana Magic Kingdom can also establish a strategic partnership with New Flyer? Our Chamber of Commerce welcomes all sincere partners." Sue looked at Sir Alex Ferguson with deep meaning. Sir Alex Ferguson coughed lightly and calmed his slightly excited mood. He nodded his head and said, "Very good, Chairman Sue, this conversation with you was very successful. I will pass on your message. If everything goes well, it won't be long before our Sorcerers Guild and New Flyer start a formal discussion." "Good, I'll wait for the good news." Chapter 1006. After sending off Sir Alex Ferguson, Sue looked at the small book that Sir Alex Ferguson had left on the table. After being silent for a bit, he finally couldn't help revealing a happy smile. Those old fellows from the Magicians' Union headquarters, They really didn't understand the powerful value of the things recorded in this small book. If they knew the true value of these things and how they were given to New Flyer at such a low price, they would be filled with regret. Of course, this couldn't be blamed on them. After all, they didn't have all the modern scientific knowledge that Sue-E had from Earth, so it wasn't strange that they didn't understand this. Those fellows might think that the magic battleship recorded in the small book was the most valuable, but to Sue-E, this was the least valuable of the 5. Compared to this, it was very likely that any of the other 4 items contained the magic theory that Sue-E and the Frestec Chamber of Commerce needed. For example, in the first record, the great magician had used fire elemental magic to create an explosion in the magic crystal, almost killing him as a great magician. But if one looked at it from another angle, whether it was normal fire elemental magic or an explosion caused by the loss of control of the magic inside the magic crystal, it shouldn't be able to injure a great magician. But when the two were combined, it created such a terrifying effect. This was enough to prove that when the fire elemental magic fused into the magic crystal, it would release a powerful energy that far surpassed normal situations. If this energy could be used correctly, it would be a very promising energy source. Most of the magic machines produced by the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce were powered by fire elemental magic arrays and wind elemental magic arrays. In the beginning, this wasn't a problem. But as New Flyer's research on magic machines became deeper and deeper, the magic machines they produced became bigger and bigger, so naturally their requirements for power became better and better. Take the magic sedan and the magic airship for example. Right now the magic sedan and the magic airship produced by the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce had a maximum speed of 150 km an hour and 200 km an hour respectively. It had already been a year since there had been any large increases. The main reason for this was that the magic sedan's engine and the magic airship's engine had been restricted by the magic array that was used. This was because whether it was the fire elemental magic array or the wind elemental magic array, the power it could release was limited by the level of the magic array. The higher the level, the more power it could release. However, if the level of this magic array was raised to an extremely high level, there would be a problem. That was, the magicians who were mainly responsible for drawing the magic array would not be able to complete the drawing work. This was because the level of the magic array was too much beyond their own magic level. Therefore, with this in mind, the magic research facility would usually try their best to control the level of the magic arrays when researching magic machines. This would make it easier for the low-level mages, who were responsible for drawing the magic arrays, to complete their work. At the same time, the Academy of Magic was working hard to increase the energy output of the low-level magic arrays, ensuring that the low-level magic arrays could reach the level of a high-level magic array. But it was very hard to make any progress with this research. After all, the signs had over 10,000 years of history, so it was impossible for there to be such a large flaw in the level of the magic array. Now that this great magician had failed, it gave Sue-E a new idea. It was to increase the compatibility between the magic array and the magic crystal, or even fuse them together. This would increase the energy output of the magic array and allow it to reach a higher level of energy. If the Sorcerers Guild transferred the research data of this great magician's failure to New Flyer, there was no doubt that New Flyer's research in this area would greatly increase. As for the second point, that wind elemental magician's idea of adding a spiral of air behind him to increase his flying speed was the same as Sue-Yi's idea of adding a jet engine to the magic airship to increase its speed. Only this research was much harder because there had never been such a strange flight magic research before. If he could obtain the research data of this magician, he could increase the speed of New Flyer's research in this area, allowing the magic airship to have a breakthrough in its flying speed. As for the two things recorded at the back of the booklet, they also contained great value. That 4 elemental hybrid magic array seemed like a concept, But if the Magicians' Union headquarters had enough detailed information to prove that this idea could be realized, it would greatly increase the power output of the magic arrays that New Flyer researched. For example, according to the research of the Academy of Magic, any single elemental magic array had a natural flaw, which was that it would become more unstable after being used for a long time. This caused most of the magic machines that New Flyer produced to have to stop after a while to stabilize the magic array. This prevented the magic array from accumulating too much chaotic elemental energy in the magic array from causing an accident. This would without a doubt make it very inconvenient to use the magic machines, and it would greatly limit the lifespan of the magic machines. So the Academy of Magic had already begun researching magic arrays that fused multiple elemental energy. They hoped that they could stabilize the various elemental energy in the magic array and increase the lifespan of the magic arrays. Now that the 4-grade elemental magic array recorded in this booklet could be used, New Flyer would have a qualitative leap in the research of magic machines in the future. As for that strange magic tool at the end, Sue-Yi looked at the picture for a while before slowly raising his right hand. He made a grasping gesture in the air before circulating his magic. After a while, there was a small black ball that appeared in Sue-Yi's hand. Then the surrounding space seemed to collapse into this black ball, and even the light in the space became distorted. This was a magic effect that could only be grasped after mastering spatial magic to a certain degree. It could cause the magic space to be compressed and cause the space in the real world to collapse. Don't look at how this black ball wasn't even as big as Sue-Yi's fist. Sue-Yi was very clear that if he released his magic right now and allowed the compressed elemental energy in this small black ball to be released, the building he was in and everything within 100 meters of the building would be flattened. This power was definitely not inferior to an ordinary tactical missile. If this thing was placed in a magic cannon shell and fired with the magic cannon, it would be without a doubt several dozen times more terrifying than the current magic cannon shell. Even if it wasn't used in the military, as long as it was slowly released, it could be used as a long-lasting energy source. However, the reason why Sue-Yi could create a small space collapse was because he was already a 5-star great magician, only a step away from becoming an archmagus. In the entire signs, there were no more than 100 magicians at his level. Moreover, magicians could directly grasp magic, but it was very hard to directly use it on magic machines. So although New Flyer had some research on this, there wasn't much progress. Sue-Yi never would have thought that when New Flyer hadn't made much progress in their research, the Magicians' Union headquarters would take out this thing that was very feasible. If his guess wasn't wrong, the magic item recorded at the end of the small book could cause a part of the magic space to collapse. If this magic item was studied in depth, there was hope in the future that the large amount of energy from the magic space collapse could be used to power magic machines. If there was another person from Earth in the Magicians' Union headquarters, they would naturally be able to see the strong value in these things. But unfortunately, they didn't. So even if the Magicians' Union headquarters knew that these things could attract the interest of Sue-Yi and New Flyer, they didn't know the true value of these things. Now, the Magicians' Union headquarters only wanted a few pieces of information that New Flyer hadn't completely made public yet. And according to Sue-Yi's opinion, not to mention a few pieces of information, even if it was dozens of pieces, or even a part of the military magic machines, it would be worth it. Of course, from the point of view of the transaction, he wouldn't be so stupid as to show that he was especially eager, so as to not give the Magicians' Union headquarters a chance to ask for a sky-high price. In order to ensure that the Sorcerers' Guild was willing to complete this transaction, he purposely pointed out the Mana Magic Kingdom, indicating that New Flyer could establish a strategic partnership with the Mana Magic Kingdom. This meant that New Flyer could follow the current rules and transfer the military magic machine-related technology to the Mana Magic Kingdom step by step. The Sorcerers' Guild was the backer of the Mana Magic Kingdom, so naturally, they were happy to see this cooperation. Hey, there are many people and countries that want the military magic machine technology on this continent, so we don't lack the Mana Magic Kingdom and the Sorcerers Guild. But unfortunately, even if I really give it to you, do you really think you can make it like this? Sui looked at the huge map of the signs hanging on the wall and lightly shook his head. Looks like it's time to teach these guys what the so-called industrial system means. Chapter 1007. In the blink of an eye, it was the end of the year and various places in the Kanla Empire were preparing for the new year. As the capital of the empire, Wimbledon City wasn't an exception. Just like before, the emperor announced the policies that would benefit the citizens of the empire next year ahead of time. This was to raise the spirits of the citizens and also to prepare for the coming of the new year. However, what was different from previous years was that among the policies announced this year, other than the usual pardons for a small number of the most annoying people, the announcement of which cities would lower their tax rates next year, the opening of granaries to help refugees, and so on, there were two policies that attracted a lot of people's attention. The first was that the Kanla Empire had reached a cooperation agreement with New Flyer. New Flyer would be investing in the Kanla Empire starting in March of next year. According to the agreement between both sides, New Flyer would first build a Shinfei magic machine industrial base outside Wimbledon City. There would be an agricultural magic machine factory, an engineering magic machine factory, a household magic machine workshop, and a large steel mill. Even if before this, New Flyer had already invested in 2 factories in the Kanla Empire and opened many factories, these 2 factories didn't belong to New Flyer in name. Rather, New Flyer had cooperated with a local company of the Kanla Empire through other relationships, or New Flyer had borrowed the shell of a local company to create them. No matter what, with New Flyer in charge, they could still be considered a company of the Kanla Empire in name. But this time, the newly built Shinfei magic machine industrial base completely belonged to New Flyer. It was officially recognized by the Kanla Empire and was a magic machine industrial base created by New Flyer. Just based on this, it was enough to prove that the Kanla Empire had finally let go of all these years. They were no longer at odds with New Flyer and chose to cooperate with New Flyer. Once this news was spread, naturally it filled people with joy. New Flyer was without a doubt the most popular company in the signs and the magic machine industry, led by the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce, was without a doubt the most promising industry in the signs. It was even praised by countless people as a great industry that could change the course of the continent. If the Kanla Empire wasn't willing to let go of this, it was very likely that they would be eliminated. The second piece of news was that the Kanla Empire would be establishing a new government organization next year. It would be called the Kanla Empire Infrastructure Development Committee, or the Kanla Foundation Development Committee for short. This development committee would be responsible for the Kanla Empire's parliament and would be responsible for developing various infrastructure projects in the Kanla Empire. Ever since New Flyer proposed the concept of infrastructure 4 years ago, it had become popular in the signs in the past 2 years. Everyone was clear that infrastructure included transportation, energy, education, healthcare, and sports. Last year, the Frestec Chamber of Commerce had added a new category to the continent's Magic Machine Industry Forum, which was called communication. In the past few years, New Flyer had been vigorously promoting the concept of infrastructure projects in various countries in the southwest of the signs. They also announced that they had basically achieved the popularization of these 6 categories of infrastructure projects in the Principality of Constantine and the Lampari Kingdom. Now that the Kanla Empire had suddenly announced the establishment of the Kanla Foundation Development Committee and would vigorously develop various infrastructure projects, it was clearly a concept taken from New Flyer. According to His Majesty's decree, the Kanla Foundation Development Committee would indeed cooperate with New Flyer to promote infrastructure projects starting next year. The initial plan was to achieve the goal of connecting all the major cities in the Kanla Empire with roads within 3 years. After this decree was announced, some people calculated it. If it was said that the main cities mentioned in the emperor's decree included the prefectures of the various provinces and the large cities of the provinces, then with the current size of the Kandra Empire and the distribution of the various cities, to complete this goal, they would need to build a total of 160,000 kilometers of roads to meet this requirement. According to the price of the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce, which was famous for its road construction projects, the average cost of building a kilometer of roads was about 3,000 gold coins. If 760,000 kilometers of roads were to be built, the total investment needed would be a terrifying 500 million gold coins. Even for the Kanla Empire, which was one of the 2 largest empires in the continent, 500 million gold coins was still an astonishing figure. It had to be known that the Kanla Empire's annual revenue last year was less than 200 million gold coins. Just building roads would cost 500 million gold coins in 3 years. What else could the empire's finances be used for? Not to mention that the goal of promoting infrastructure projects in the emperor's decree wasn't just building roads in 3 years. It also included building a basic magic communication network in Wimbledon City and all the prefectures in 5 years, as well as building enough magic energy distribution stations in all the cities in the empire within 10 years. Then again, even if they didn't talk about infrastructure projects, there were still many places in the empire that needed money. So everyone guessed that the Kanla Empire must have reached an agreement with the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce and the New Flyer in exchange for some benefit. Some people even guessed that with the Kanla Empire's position in the signs market, the New Flyer and the Kanla Empire might be willing to help the Kanla Empire build infrastructure projects at a loss in order to obtain this large market. Because only in this way could they further promote their business to the Kanla Empire. From a long-term perspective, this choice was very wise. Wise my ass. Chairman Cruz angrily snorted. He threw the newly released Candela Weekly to the side and rolled his eyes at Sue beside him. Your New Flyer has a large business, so it's fine if you lose a bit, but our Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce doesn't have that much money to lose. That's a total of 160,000 kilometers of roads, a total investment of 500 million gold coins. If I'm crazy and want to build these roads at a loss, I'm afraid that our Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce will close down before it's finished. Sue suddenly laughed. This is what the Candela Weekly said. Why are you complaining to me? I just can't stand these Candela people acting so high and mighty with their noses in the air. They really think that the Kanla Empire is still one of the top empires on the continent and that other countries can only look up to them and worship them. Bah! In my opinion, if our Lampari Kingdom and the Kanla Empire fought a good battle, they would definitely lose. I'm certain that the Lampari Kingdom will win 1 battle or 10 battles. But if we're talking about the final victory, I'm not optimistic about the Lampari Kingdom's chances. Sue shook his head. President Cruz glared at Sue and wanted to refute, but then he let out a sigh. That's right, in the end, our Lampari Kingdom is too small. The most important thing is that our foundation was too weak before. If we go all out against the Kanla Empire, even if we win the battle, it's unlikely that we'll be able to swallow such a large empire. But Sue, if we have the full support of your New Flyer, I don't think there'll be any problems. Were you sent by Her Majesty the Queen? Sue glanced at him. Let's not talk about why our New Flyer isn't making money and is fully supporting the Lampari Kingdom. Even if we fully support them, do you think that it'll be that easy to completely defeat the Kanla Empire? Why not? President Cruz straightened his neck and said in a rather unconvinced manner, Your New Flyer's guards are so strong, there's absolutely no army on the continent that can stop you. Combined with our Lampari Kingdom's army that has been completely equipped with military magic machines, we can completely defeat the resistance of the Kanla Empire without any effort. If you want to invade a country, the problem has never been defeating the other party's army, but rather the aftermath. Sui said seriously. I've already discussed this with Her Majesty the Queen many times. Even she has to agree with my analysis, so you don't need to refute it. President Cruz was silent for a moment. Suddenly, his expression became very strange, and he asked hesitantly, Sui, have you heard of a recent rumor in the Lampari Kingdom? Rumor? Sui frowned slightly. I'm very busy, I don't have time to pay attention to rumors. After saying this, he turned his head and glanced at President Cruz. Seeing his strange expression, he couldn't help but ask, what rumor? It's this. President Cruz's expression became more and more strange. After hesitating for a long time, he finally made up his mind. He clenched his teeth and said, Her Majesty the Queen only has one son, Prince Kane. Therefore, if nothing unexpected happens, the one who will inherit the throne in the future should be Prince Kane. Yes, it's very obvious. What? Could it be that there are still people in the Lampari Kingdom who dare to spread rumors about Prince Kane? This rumor has been spreading very widely in the kingdom recently, and many people believe it. In short, it's a bit fierce. So, after talking for so long, what is this rumor? Sui couldn't help but ask. President Cruz glanced at Sui and coughed lightly. He lowered his voice and said, You see, Prince Kane's mother is Her Majesty the Queen, but Her Majesty the Queen has never married. Therefore, everyone is very curious about who Prince Kane's father is. This rumor is about Prince Kane's father. Sui's expression changed, but he still calmly said, What does the rumor say? The rumor says, Prince Kane's father is you. Chapter 1008. When the magic sedan brought the two of them to their destination, Sui didn't say a single word the entire way. Chairman Cruz, who wanted to talk, saw that Sui had a very calm expression, but he felt that the atmosphere in the magic sedan was very strange and oppressive, so he tactfully didn't say anything. The magic sedan stopped and Sui came out first. After Chairman Cruz came out, he paused and decided to change the topic. Hey, Sui, you're the chairman of a large company now, so why do you still like to drive your own car? Why don't you learn from the other important people and hire a driver to drive for you? That way you can save quite a bit of effort. Sui turned to look at him and softly said, Don't worry. If there was a driver, it wouldn't be convenient for you to say those words, right? Seeing Sui turn and walk towards the half of the base in front of him, Chairman Cruz couldn't help giving a bitter laugh. Why did he have to have such a cheap mouth and mention this rumor in front of Sui? But based on Sui's reaction, this rumor might be true. This meant that Sui and Her Majesty had a close relationship that surpassed anyone's imagination. They had even given birth to the product of their love, which was Prince Kane. This also explained why the new flyer had always supported the Lampari Kingdom and why Her Majesty had treated Sui differently from the beginning. If all the questions could be answered with this, it would all make sense. Chairman Cruz's eyes turned and he couldn't help curling his lips into a faint smile. If this was true, he didn't need to worry that the new flyer would abandon the Lampari Kingdom and support other countries. Because Prince Kane would definitely inherit the throne of the Lampari Kingdom in the future, so what reason did Sui have to not support his son as the king of this country? As long as he had the support of the new flyer, the Lampari Kingdom's prospects were very good. As one of the companies of the Lampari Kingdom, the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce didn't need to worry about the other countries, especially the traditional companies of the Kanla Empire and the Mala Empire. Of course, even without this relationship, with the close relationship between the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce and the new flyer, He believed that Sue-E wouldn't easily abandon a partner like him. Thinking of this, Chairman Cruz quickly walked forward and caught up to Sue-E. They came to a large building with a sign. The name on the sign was Wimbledon Construction Material Base First Production Workshop, which meant that this was the main production workshop in the construction material base. According to the cooperation agreement between the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce and the Canla Empire, the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce would build 160,000 kilometers of roads for the Canla Empire in the 3-year road project. Naturally, the amount of cement, steel, concrete, and other construction materials required would be astronomical. Although it wasn't impossible to transport a large amount of materials from the Principality of Constantine and the Lampari Kingdom, the cost would undoubtedly be greatly increased. So the Kandra Empire discussed with the Frestec Chamber of Commerce and decided to build a production base outside Wimbledon City for the various materials needed for the road project, specially producing materials for this large road project. This production base wasn't directly under the New Flyer's name. Instead, the New Flyer would provide technical support and initial guidance, and the Canla Empire would be responsible for the processing and production. According to the agreement signed between the New Flyer and the Canla Empire should have 60% of the shares, and the New Flyer should have the remaining 40%. However, the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce said that they were the main users of these construction materials. In order to ensure the quality of the road project, they had to personally participate in the production to ensure the quality of the construction materials. Although the Canla Empire was very dissatisfied with the reason given by the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce, they finally agreed to the request of the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce. Therefore, the shares of the production base were redistributed. The Canla Empire would have 50% of the shares, the New Flyer would have 30%, and the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce would have the remaining 20%. Today was the first production workshop of the production base. It was also the day that the workshop mainly responsible for the production of cement was officially completed and put into production. President Sue-E and President Cruz, as the representatives of the New Flyer and the Canla Empire, respectively, came here to observe. The Canla Empire naturally sent a corresponding big shot to be in charge of receiving them. Seeing the two of them come over, the head of the Kandra Imperial Magical Industries Administration, Raphael, Count of Aylwin, and the chairman of the Canla Empire's Infrastructure Promotion and Operation Committee, Count of Marduf, immediately brought a group of subordinates from their respective departments to welcome them. Chairman Sue, President Cruz, welcome, welcome. The Count of Aylwin had a smile on his face as he took the initiative to reach out his hand to Sue-E. Sue-E and President Cruz shook hands with the two of them. Then they introduced the subordinates that they brought and the group of people walked into the workshop. As soon as they entered the workshop, they heard a rumbling sound coming from in front of them. Looking up, they saw a row of brand new large machines lined up in a row, forming a cement production line that was close to 100 meters long. The farthest one was the magic pulverizer that was in charge of grinding and grinding. As soon as the large amounts of powder and dust came out of the separation box, it was as if there was an invisible force gathering them together. Then it was piled up in a corner through a pipe. In this way, the most criticized dust pollution in the cement production process on Earth would be reduced to a minimum. At the same time, there were some normal-looking coniferous plants placed around the workshop. Even if there was dust in the entire production line, it would be filtered by the dust-absorbing plants that the elves had specially cultivated. This made the entire workshop very clean. It didn't look like a cement production workshop at all. Hey, Chairman Sue, I forgot to tell you, these plants were made by the elves, right? Tell them to sell some to our Chamber of Commerce. Our Chamber of Commerce's workers have been coughing all day because of the heavy dust on the construction site, which greatly affects their work efficiency. Chairman Cruz suddenly pointed at the plants on both sides of the workshop. I've told you many times to pay attention to the health of the workers, and I've set a corresponding standard for you. Did you not pay attention to it? Sui looked at him with a frown. President Cruz gave a dry laugh and turned his head. The workers find it troublesome, and not many people are willing to follow it. Sui gave a soft snort. He thought that it wasn't just the workers of the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce who didn't pay attention. Even your Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce didn't care about the health of the workers. In the end, the signs were a society that was between a slave society and a feudal society. They didn't have any awareness of human rights at all, and they wouldn't understand the benefits of this awareness. In the eyes of a company's chairman like President Cruz, even if a worker died, he wouldn't feel anything. And even if a worker died, he would at most admit that he was unlucky. It was impossible for him to ask the company for compensation like on Earth. Thinking of this, Sui turned to the Count of Aylwin and the Count of Marduf and said seriously, "Counts, with the development of the magic machine industry, there is a high demand for skilled workers. So I hope that you can publicize this to the companies related to the magic machine industry in the Empire and pay attention to the health and safety of the workers." The Count of Aylwin and the Count of Marduf smiled and nodded, but their expressions clearly revealed that they didn't care. Sui secretly shook his head. He knew that explaining these principles to them now was tantamount to playing the lute to a cow. If they didn't experience the pain themselves, they wouldn't understand at all. President Cruz was rebuffed by Sui and shook his head. He turned to look at the end of the production line and grabbed a handful of cement powder. He first rubbed it with his hand, then put it to his nose and sniffed it. He then looked around and walked to a bucket in the corner of the workshop and scooped some water into his hand. Sui saw his actions and couldn't help but stare. He went over and slapped the cement powder that had already mixed with the water off his hand and scolded, "Don't you want your hand any more?" President Cruz was startled, then smiled and waved his hand. "It's fine, I do this all the time. It's just a little troublesome to wash my hands later." Sui couldn't help but roll his eyes. He thought that these guys really didn't have a sense of safety. As for the safety standards that he had attached to the various magic machines that he sold, these guys probably didn't care about them at all. "Don't do this in the future." Sui stopped President Cruz and looked down at the cement on the ground. He asked President Cruz, "How is it? How is the quality?" President Cruz nodded with satisfaction. "Very good. The quality of this cement isn't any worse than your new flyers. To be precise, it's even a lot better than the cement that your new flyer produced in the first few years." After saying that, he turned to the Count of Aylwin and the Count of Marduf and raised his hand and made a gesture of praise. The Count of Aylwin and the Count of Marduf immediately smiled. "President Cruz, please rest assured. His Majesty the Emperor attaches great importance to the 3-year road paving plan, and this material production base is one of the most important facilities. Of course, we will pay great attention to ensure the quality of the materials." Very good. If all the materials here can be guaranteed to be of the same quality, of course the most important thing is to guarantee the output. Our company will be much more efficient in paving the roads. We will definitely be able to easily complete this plan in 3 years. President Cruz said with a faint smile. The Count of Aylwin revealed a smile. He suddenly took 2 steps closer to Sui and pointed at the production line in the workshop as he said, "Chairman Su, look, the cement workshop has already started working and everything is going smoothly. The other workshops in the base will also start working. But just this base alone is far from enough to satisfy all the needs of the Empire." Sui looked at him with a ghost of a smile. "Sir Count, what do you want to say?" Chairman Su, all the equipment in this production base came from your new flyer. Don't you think it's a bit inconvenient?" Sui revealed a smile of deep meaning. "Sir Count's meaning is, you want to make your own production magic machines?" The Count of Aylwin laughed. If Chairman Su is willing to transfer this technology, of course we can't thank you enough. Su-yi looked at him with a smile, thinking that his guess was right. The Kandla Empire was one of the two large empires of the signs. They weren't willing to accept the arrangements of others like some small countries. It was just that they thought too highly of themselves if they wanted to abandon him so quickly and do it on their own. Chapter 1009. As for the production magic machine technology, I do have the intention of transferring it. Hearing Su-yi's words, the eyes of the Count of Aylwin and the Count of Marduf, who was eavesdropping not far away, lit up at the same time. Then, Chairman Su, how about we take this chance to talk? The Count of Aylwin immediately invited Su-yi. All right. Su-yi agreed with a smile. The two of them didn't lower their voices, so not only did the Count of Marduf not far away hear it, even Chairman Cruz heard it. Chairman Cruz looked at Su-yi with a bit of confusion, not understanding why he agreed so easily. It had to be known that when it came to the production magic machine technology, even if the Lampari Kingdom wanted to transfer it to the New Flyer, they had spent a lot of effort to obtain the agreement of the New Flyer. After that, it took several years of effort before the Lampari Kingdom grasped the basic technology. Moreover, in these 2 years they were able to make some relatively low-end machines. Now that the Kandla Empire had only asked, Su-yi had actually agreed. In comparison, wasn't he favoring one too much and discriminating against the other? Thinking of the rumors he had mentioned to Su-yi before, Chairman Cruz couldn't help feeling a bit dissatisfied. This Su-yi, he was so generous to the Kandla Empire, but he was so strict with the Lampari Kingdom that he had a close relationship with. This really couldn't be justified. However, this thought only lingered in Chairman Cruz's mind for a bit before he threw it out. He had known Su-yi for over 10 years, so he understood Su-yi very well. He was very clear that Su-yi wasn't someone who liked the new and disliked the old. He had made this decision for another reason. Thinking of this, Chairman Cruz suppressed the doubts in his heart and said to the Count of Marduf with a smile, Sir Count, as for the 2 roads around Wimbledon City, our company has made a plan based on the preliminary results. What do you think? After 2 days of discussions, Su-yi represented the New Flyer and the Count of Aylwin represented the Kandra Imperial Magical Industries Administration, reached a new technology transfer agreement. The New Flyer would transfer the various production magic machines needed for road construction to the Kandla Empire and send technicians to help the Kandla Empire master these technologies. There were 127 projects in this agreement and the total amount was 7,600,000 gold coins. At the same time, the Kandla Empire would give some preferential treatment to the New Flyer because of this technology transfer. For example, the Kandra Imperial Magical Industries Administration, represented by the Count of Aylwin, had listed the New Flyer as one of their important partners, so they would give the New Flyer special treatment. For example, when the New Flyer's magic machines entered the Kandla Empire, they had to be inspected by the Magic Machine Industry Management Department before they could be sold. Now that the Magic Machine Industry Management Department had listed them as an important partner, the New Flyer's products would be exempted from inspection when they entered the Kandla Empire. At the same time, they would be officially recommended products by the Magic Machine Industry Management Department. The former allowed the New Flyer's products to enter the Kandla Empire without going through many procedures, saving a large amount of time and manpower. Although the latter wasn't that important with the New Flyer's current fame, the Magic Machine Industry Management Department had promised that if the Kandla Empire needed to use magic machines, they would use the New Flyer's products. Just based on this, it would bring an incalculable amount of profit to the New Flyer. In terms of pure economic benefits, the New Flyer transferring the production magic machine technology to the Kandla Empire was without a doubt a very profitable business. However, Chairman Cruz, who had personally participated in the signing of the agreement, was still puzzled by this. Sue, why are you giving away this precious technology so easily? If it was up to me, you could just hold it in your hands and ignore those fellows from the Canla Empire. Since they want to develop, they need these production magic machines. Letting them buy from your company, wouldn't you earn even more? If I just want to earn money, your suggestion would be the best choice. Sue shook his head. But it's clear that I'm not just doing this. Alright, I know that you have big goals and don't care about earning money. But have you ever thought that the Canla Empire isn't a small country? If you give the technology to them, as long as they are willing to invest in it, they might be able to make their own production magic machines without your company. When that time comes, your new flyer's position in their hearts won't be as important as it is now. Don't you think that this is very dangerous? Sue turned to look at Chairman Cruz with a teasing smile on his face. Do you really think that if I give them the technology they will be able to make the production magic machines? I know what you mean. Of course they won't be able to grasp it in a short period of time, but the Canla Empire is a large empire. If they are given some time, they will definitely be able to grasp it. Chairman Cruz waved his hand as he spoke. Cruz, you are considered an old man in this industry. Do you still not understand the importance of a complete industrial system? Sue shook his head. Relax, even if the Canla Empire has the same level of production magic machine technology as our company, it is impossible for them to make a single production magic machine with their own power. How is that possible? Chairman Cruz had a look of disbelief. You don't believe me? Sue revealed a faint smile. Then let's make a bet? If the Canla Empire can make a production magic machine with their own power in 3 years, I will give the same technology to your Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce for free. If they can't, your Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce will have to complete a project for our company. Chairman Cruz knit his brows. Sue, this bet doesn't seem right? Even if we didn't make a bet, do you think that I would refuse to help you complete a project? After saying that, he laughed. After laughing, he said this, of course, if you don't give me a single copper coin, I will have to properly consider it. Of course it's impossible not to give money, so we'll follow the normal arrangements. But you might not be willing to do this project. How about it? Are you willing to accept this bet? I might not be willing. Chairman Cruz muttered with knit brows. He thought that the project Sue gave him, and it was something the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce could complete, so it shouldn't be too excessive. Then why did Sue want to make this bet with him? Could it be that he wanted him to believe that the Canla Empire couldn't make a production magic machine in 3 years? How about it? Do you want to bet? Seeing that Chairman Cruz was still hesitating, Sue urged him. Chairman Cruz thought for a bit before giving a nod. All right, then we'll bet. 3 years. Of course, if the Canla Empire goes smoothly, you might lose next year. Chairman Cruz deliberately revealed a drooling look as he said with a laugh, the production magic machine technology, although our Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce won't mainly invest in this, it's still good to earn a bit of money. First you have to be able to get it. Sue revealed a smile. He looked up and pointed at the magic sedan he drove over before saying to Chairman Cruz, since you'll be in Wimbledon City for a while, I'll give this magic sedan to you first. After you're done, just send it to our company's branch here. Chairman Cruz was surprised. Where are you going now? Sue waved his hand and the scattered subordinates of the new flyer came over. Since I've transferred the production magic machine technology to the Canla Empire, do you think the Mala Empire will let me off? This means that you're heading to the Mala Empire right now. Right. You're giving me the magic sedan, how are you going? Sue smiled without replying as he looked up at the sky. After a while, there was a black figure that quickly floated over from the west. Chairman Cruz understood. Hey, so you're using the magic airship to fly over. This is indeed much faster than the magic sedan, and it's much more comfortable. Right, Sui, speaking of this. How about you sell me a magic airship? I spend more time outside than you, so if I have a magic airship, I can save quite a bit of effort. The daily consumption and maintenance cost of a magic airship is over 100 times that of a magic sedan. Are you certain you need it? Sui looked at him with a bit of a funny look. Moreover, just the price. This magic airship costs 500,000 gold coins. Are you really willing to buy it? 500,000 gold coins. Chairman Cruz's lips twitched, as if he felt a bit of heartache. But after thinking about it, he forcefully gritted his teeth. All right. 500,000 it is. As long as you're willing to sell it, I'm willing to buy it. Sui looked up at the magic airship that was slowly descending in front of him, and said in a soft voice, Don't blame me for not reminding you. The Lampari Kingdom's parliament has already passed a ban on the kingdom's airspace last month, forbidding all unapproved flying objects from flying over the kingdom's airspace. The magic airship is one of them. Chairman Cruz was surprised, but then he waved his hand without caring at all. This is normal since this thing is flying in the sky, so it's very dangerous, so it's normal to have a ban. Anyway, with our Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce's current position, it shouldn't be hard to get a special pass. The reason I'm telling you this is, since the Lampari Kingdom has already passed this ban, it's very likely that the other countries on the continent will follow suit. This means that if you want to fly in the magic airship in the future, you won't have that freedom. In this kind of situation, you still want to buy it? Hearing Sui say this, Chairman Cruz's decision that he had just made was immediately shaken. He wanted to buy the magic airship to make it easier for him to travel between countries on the continent. If every country had the same ban, this convenience wouldn't exist, and there would be less meaning in buying it. Seeing Chairman Cruz hesitate again, Sui gave a laugh and patted his shoulder. Come find me when you've thought it through. After saying this, he led his subordinates into the magic airship that had already opened the hatch. After a while, the hatch closed and they flew into the sky, disappearing without a trace. Chairman Cruz looked in the direction the magic airship disappeared in a daze before turning back to look at the magic sedan that Sui left behind, helplessly shaking his head. Chapter 10:10. Different from the Canla Empire, because of the relationship with the Marquis of Southgard, the Mala Empire had shown an attitude of cooperating with the new flyer from the beginning. Moreover, in the following 10 years, the relationship between the two sides was very close and the cooperation was very harmonious. So compared to the Canla Empire's magic machine industry that was still in its infancy, the Mala Empire, with the help of the new flyer, had already built a basic magic machine industry in just a few years. The current Mala Empire, not only could they produce many kinds of household magic machines, they had also industrialized most of the daily necessities in the empire. Several years ago, because of the influx of the new flyer and the other magic machine companies, the Mala Empire had been greatly cleansed. The citizens of the empire would even choose the cheap and easy-to-use plastic washbasins from the countries in the southwest corner of the continent or the stainless steel and other alloy washbasins that wouldn't rust. But now, the Mala Empire had introduced large amounts of technology and boldly promoted the magic machine industry, allowing the stainless steel and other alloy washbasins produced in the empire to be recognized by the citizens. Even the plastic products that had been monopolized by the Nightsong tribe, with the cooperation between the Mala Empire and the Nightsong tribe, the Nightsong tribe finally agreed to build many plastic processing factories in the Mala Empire, allowing them to produce plastic products in the empire. It wasn't exaggerated to say that the current Mala Empire was already self-sufficient in low-end industrial products. Although the quality of most products couldn't compare to the new flyer and couldn't even compare to the old magic machine companies of the Lampari Kingdom, they were cheap and practical. Adding in the fact that the Mala Empire produced them locally, they had a natural advantage, so they had quite a large market. But in terms of high-end magic machines, the Mala Empire was still a blank. Not only did they not have a way to make household magic machines like the magic air conditioner or the magic sedan, they didn't have the ability to make production magic machines, construction magic machines, and other large and medium magic machines. The only thing that wasn't bad was that they could produce all the agricultural magic machines on their own, although this was achieved on the basis of obtaining parts from other companies. So when Su-Yi came to the Mala Empire on behalf of the new flyer to express his willingness to transfer some of the production magic machine technology to the Mala Empire, he was immediately welcomed by the Mala Empire. After 3 days of preliminary discussions, the new flyer and the Mala Empire reached a technology transfer agreement. It was the same as the technology transfer agreement with the Kanla Empire. This time, the technology new flyer gave the Mala Empire included the production magic machine technology for various engineering materials. There was no difference at all. But because of the Mala Empire's good cooperation and the development of the magic machine industry in the Mala Empire was much better than the Kanla Empire, Su-Yi signed an additional agreement with the Mala Empire. This agreement was related to magic machine research. According to the agreement, the new flyer would cooperate with 3 Archmagi from the Mala Empire, including Archmagus Alistair, to conduct deep research in the field of magic machines. As for the results of the research, it would be shared between the new flyer and the Mala Empire. This agreement was without a doubt a piece of good news for the Mala Empire, because everyone knew that in terms of magic machine research, the new flyer was without a doubt far ahead. So even if this agreement was a cooperation between both sides on the surface, the Mala Empire would definitely gain even more benefits from this. Moreover, Su-Yi had specially proposed to the Mala Empire that he was willing to provide technical support to the Mala Empire to build a magic machine industry academy for normal people. This would help more people in the Mala Empire enter the magic machine industry. The Mala Empire was naturally very satisfied with this and immediately stated that they would invest in at least 50 magic machine industry academies in the empire in the next 2 years. So both sides had a good discussion, and Su-Yi's trip in the Mala Empire could be considered very perfect. Other than some differences in opinion between both sides, there wasn't a single sound of disagreement during the negotiations. Several days later, the magic airship carrying Su-Yi and several subordinates of the new flyer arrived at Marquis of Southgard's private territory. When Su-Yi came out of the cabin, the Marquis of Southgard, who had already received the news ahead of time, came forward with Baron Franklin. Su-Yi had led his subordinates here this time mainly because of the request of the Marquis of Southgard to reconstruct various infrastructure on his private territory. In terms of road transportation, because the new flyer and the other companies had invested in factories here, after many years of investment, there was a complete road network around this private territory. Moreover, it was connected to the basic road network in the Mala Empire, so it could be considered quite a bit. So this time they were mainly discussing the construction of the communication network. The subordinates that came with Su-Yi included Akali and the Magic Communication Network research team she led. After a simple greeting with the Marquis of Southgard, Su-Yi waved his hand and Akali led her subordinates to explore the area. Seeing them like this, the Marquis of Southgard couldn't help being surprised. "Chairman Su, you shouldn't be so busy right now, right? You just arrived, how about you let them rest for a day and familiarize themselves with the environment before starting work?" Su-Yi shook his head and rejected the Marquis of Southgard's good intentions. New Flyer was currently promoting the Magic Communication Network in many countries, so Akali and the others had a heavy task, so they didn't have time to take it slow. "Sir Marquis, is this the situation every day?" Su-Yi turned to look at the small magic machine industrial base in the distance and saw the transport magic cars and horse carriages outside, so he asked the Marquis of Southgard this. It's like this every day." The Marquis of Southgard replied with a smile. Actually, because it's only October and it isn't the peak season, this is considered a small number. If you come in the summer or winter, you'll find that there are at least twice as many transport vehicles. It was clear that the goal of these transport magic cars and horse carriages was to transport large amounts of magic machine products from this small magic machine industrial base, transporting them to various places in the Mala Empire to be sold. Because according to the contract these companies signed when they entered the Marquis of Southgard's territory, the better their profits, the more taxes they would have to pay to the Marquis of Southgard. So seeing that business was this good, the Marquis of Southgard was naturally happy. Oh? There are many household magic machine companies in the Mala Empire now, so it doesn't affect this place? Sui asked. Of course not. The Marquis of Southgard laughed. He shook his head and confidently said, Chairman Su, these are all companies from the Lampari Kingdom. In our Mala Empire, they produce the highest grade household magic machines. They are more famous than the household magic machines produced by the companies of our Mala Empire, so naturally they are more popular. Not to mention that there is also your new flyer here. That's right. Baron Franklin on the side said. Chairman Su, you don't know, but your new flyer's products are very popular in our Mala Empire. Not to mention normal citizens wanting to have a household magic machine from your Shinfei brand, the nobles of the empire aren't willing to use the household magic machines produced by other companies other than your new flyer. This is because using household magic machines other than the Shinfei brand is shameful. Oh? It's that exaggerated? Sui was a bit surprised. Although he knew that Shinfei brand household magic machines were the most famous brand in the signs, he didn't expect it to be this good. But thinking about it, when the Chinese Empire was first opened, normal citizens would look up to the large amounts of household appliances that came in from other countries. It wasn't hard to understand how the people of the Mala Empire would think about the Shinfei brand household magic machines. Hee, it's that exaggerated. The Marquis of Southgard laughed and gave Sui a look. Sui understood and walked to the side with him. Chairman Su, there are so many household magic machine companies in the empire now. It seems like the profits are quite good. Cough. Actually, I also want to join in, what do you think? Of course there's no problem. Sui replied with a smile. Sir Marquis, you have the funds, the manpower, and most importantly, the foundation here. If you want to join this industry, I don't think there's any pressure. Yes, that's what I think too. But there's a problem. The Marquis of Southgard looked at Sui and hesitated for a while before continuing. If I set up a household magic machine company now, compared to other companies and household magic machines of other brands, I don't have much of an advantage because I don't have any reputation. So I think, if Sir Marquis is willing to cooperate with our company, I would welcome it. Sui smiled. As long as we announce to the public that this company has the support of our new flyer, I believe it will naturally become quite famous. Don't you think so, Sir Marquis? This was undoubtedly the special offer that Sui gave to the Marquis of Southgard. In view of the convenience and help that the Marquis of Southgard provided when the new flyer entered the Mala Empire, Sui felt that this level of special treatment was deserved. However, the Marquis of Southgard didn't seem to be too satisfied. After hesitating for a while, he shook his head and said, Chairman Su, I hope to go one step further. This company will be established by me with the funds and manpower. You and the new flyer don't have to do anything. However, the household magic machines produced in the end will be hung under the new flyer brand. What do you think? Chapter 10-11. Sui squinted his eyes and looked at the Marquis of Southgard with a strange expression. Sir Marquis' proposal seemed reasonable at first glance. New flyer didn't need to care about anything, they just needed to allow the other party to hang their brand. There was no real loss at all. However, if one really looked into it, it was exactly the same as those card sets that were hated by many manufacturers on Earth, or simply counterfeited brand names. The consequences could be big or small, but in short, there was no benefit to the counterfeited brand name. Seeing that Sui didn't answer, the Marquis of Southgard seemed to have suddenly thought of something and added with a smile, "I forgot to say. Chairman Su, New Flyer can get 30% of the profits from the household magic machines produced like this. Do you think it's appropriate?" Sui blinked and slowly but firmly shook his head. No. The Marquis of Southgard was stunned. He thought that by coming to discuss this with Sui with good intentions, and even taking the initiative to give 30% of the profits to the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, he was already giving Sui face. If it wasn't for New Flyer's great reputation in the entire continent and its strong influence in the Mala Empire, he wouldn't have even considered discussing with Sui and would have already started production. In the end, it was just the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's sign. Could it be that the Frestec Chamber of Commerce would dare cause trouble for him? He didn't expect Sui to reject him so straightforwardly. He didn't even use a gentle tone. It could be said that he didn't leave any room for negotiation. "Chairman Su, what's wrong with this?" the Marquis of Southgard asked with a frown. "It's just hanging a New Flyer brand, it won't affect anything. If you're afraid that the quality of the products we produce isn't good enough and will affect the reputation of New Flyer, then you can send people here to supervise the production and ensure the quality." Looking at the Marquis of Southgard's disapproving expression, Sui almost couldn't help but sneer. This Marquis really had a good plan. Not only did he want to hang the New Flyer brand on his household magic machines so that he wouldn't have to worry about sales, he even wanted Sui to take the initiative to send technicians to help him. This way, the household magic machine factory under the Marquis of Southgard name could produce products that were comparable to New Flyer's own products. At the same time, they could hang the New Flyer brand. It would definitely sell very well and the profits would definitely be considerable. The price that Marquis Southgate had to pay was just 30% of the profits and the manpower that wasn't considered anything to him at all. "No, Lord Marquis, that's impossible." Thinking of this, Sui's tone became even more firm when he answered, showing an expression that said there was no room for negotiation. "Only the household magic machines that our Frestec Chamber of Commerce has invested in can be branded with our Frestec Chamber of Commerce's brand, other similar products can't." The Marquis of Southgard frowned deeply. "You really can't? You really can't?" The Marquis of Southgard looked straight into Sui's eyes. Sui's gaze was also focused and didn't avoid it in the slightest. After a while, the Marquis of Southgard raised the corner of his mouth and laughed. "All right, since Chairman Su doesn't agree, then forget it. Now that I think about it, I was thinking too simply. Chairman Su, I hope you don't mind." Sui also laughed. "It's nothing. Since we're all business partners, if you have any ideas, just say it. Whether it succeeds or not, it won't affect our relationship, right?" The Marquis of Southgard nodded. "Yes, that's right. We still have a lot of business to do. If it doesn't work this time, there's always a next time." Seeing the bright smile on Marquis Southgate's face, Sui had a smile on his face, but he couldn't help giving a sigh in his heart. The Marquis of Southgard's sudden request was clearly a test. In the end, Sui didn't give him any room for negotiation, which of course would affect their relationship. However, Sui couldn't do anything. The Marquis of Southgard's request had touched on one of his principles. He definitely couldn't agree. Instead of being ambiguous and causing misunderstandings, it was better to be straightforward and lay out his bottom line. It was better to let the other party see the truth earlier. "Right, Sir Marquis. Last time you said that your private guards wanted to exchange for a batch of magic repeating crossbows, right?" Sui suddenly asked. The Marquis of Southgard glanced at Sui and his expression changed. He nodded with a smile and replied, "That's right. But last time you said that your Chamber of Commerce has greatly reduced the production of magic repeating crossbows and is focusing on higher-end military magic machines, so you can't supply them. Yes, it was like that before. But last month, the Lampari Kingdom's Northern Army changed their equipment and a batch of magic repeating crossbows were eliminated. If you want, I can use my connections in the Northern Army to transport a batch of magic repeating crossbows to you. Sui said. Really? The Marquis of Southguard's eyes lit up, but then he worriedly said, since they were eliminated. They wouldn't all be broken, right? Only a small portion of them are broken. Most of them are still in good condition. This is because this is just a normal change of equipment and not a true elimination. Sui explained. That sounds pretty good. Chairman Su, can you really get some for me? As long as Sir Marquis really needs it, you can leave it to me, Sui said with a serious expression. The Marquis of Southguard pondered for a bit and then nodded with a serious expression. All right, I'll leave it to Chairman Su. The two looked at each other and then smiled at the same time. The Marquis of Southguard was very clear that Sui suddenly mentioned this matter because he had rejected his request and wanted to make up for it in other ways. In reality, if it was just a batch of magic repeating crossbows, it wasn't that important, but the attitude that Sui expressed through this matter made the Marquis of Southguard very satisfied. This meant that Sui still wanted to maintain a good relationship with him, and as long as this was confirmed, a small setback didn't count for anything. In the next 3 days, Sui stayed in the Marquis of Southguard private territory. Through his relationship with the Marquis of Southguard, he met with the other large nobles of the Mala Empire that had contact with the new flyer before. Including Duke Marquis, who had the best personal relationship with the Marquis of Southguard, there were a total of 17 large nobles of the Mala Empire with the title of Marquis and 76 small nobles with the title of Count and Count that signed a letter of intent with the new flyer to set up a magic communication network. After this, they would make a final decision based on the situation of the new flyer setting up a magic communication network in the Marquis of Southguard private territory. They would decide if they would set up a magic communication network in their own territory. The private territories of these nobles were all in the same province, and they weren't that far from each other. Adding them all together, they took up a quarter of the entire province. Akali and the group she led had already made detailed calculations on these private territories before. In the end, they came to a conclusion that if they could set up a magic communication network in the private territories of these nobles, with the magic signal towers that had a maximum transmission range of 8 kilometers, the range of the magic signal wouldn't just be a quarter of the province, it would be close to half of it. Then they just needed to set up some magic signal towers in the middle of the nobles' private territories to connect to them. That way, they would be able to send magic signals through the private territories of these nobles, allowing them to talk to each other through the magic communication network at any time. Once this goal was reached, the coverage of the magic communication network would be over half of the province, and it wouldn't be far from covering the entire province. Of course, the reason why these nobles actively chose to set up a magic communication network, other than the Marquis of Southguard taking the first step, the most important reason was that the new flyer had reached an agreement with the high level of the Malar Empire. They had decided to try and promote the magic communication network in the Malar Empire. The Marquis of Southguard private territory was chosen as a test. As for the other nobles who participated, some of them were persuaded by the Marquis of Southguard and some of them took the initiative to join. It was different from several years ago. With the strong promotion of the new flyer, most of the countries and people of the signs recognized the use of the magic communication network. They didn't treat it as an evil magic tower that could control people's hearts like it was thousands of years ago. So even if the new flyer didn't say anything, there were still many people who were willing to try this legendary device that could allow you to talk to people who were far away. According to the initial plan, after the magic communication network was set up in the private territories of these nobles, if the Malur Empire was satisfied with the results, they would spread it through the entire province. The final goal was to have the magic communication network cover the entire Malur Empire. For Sui, his first goal was to develop the magic communication network in the Malur Empire and the Fok Kingdom at the same time. Then he would connect the two countries' magic communication networks together and connect it to the Drake Duchy's magic communication network. Finally, he would be able to integrate the new Flyer's magic communication network in the Principality of Constantine, the Lampari Kingdom, and the Kingdom of Ruhr. If he could achieve this goal, these countries would be able to communicate with each other without any hindrance, which would bring great convenience. For example, for Sui, at least he didn't need to make a trip to the Malur Empire that was over 3,000 kilometers away. If he had that much time, he might as well stay at home with his children. Chapter 10-12. It was the end of December, and there were less than 10 days left until the new year. Just like in previous years, New Flyer would have half a month of annual leave during the new year. The time period was from a week before the new year to a week after the new year. Therefore, even though there were still 3 days before the official holiday, the new Flight Commerce main base was already filled with a strong atmosphere of excitement before the holiday. Almost all of the employees in the Chamber of Commerce were looking forward to the new year, but in order to enjoy the longest holiday, they had to finish all of their work before the holiday. Otherwise, if they still had work to do during the holiday, they wouldn't be able to enjoy the holiday. Therefore, New Flyer became extremely efficient these days. It could even be considered the most efficient period of the year. Just in the first 20 days of the month, the output reported by the various factories was comparable to last month's output. Some departments even slightly exceeded it. When Sui saw this phenomenon, he couldn't help but feel emotional. If the Chamber of Commerce could maintain this efficiency throughout the year, then he wouldn't have to worry about the output of the Chamber of Commerce. Hey, Mr. President, it's true that the efficiency is high now, but if it's like this all year round, I'm afraid people will be exhausted in 2 months. The director of the New Flyer's Home Magic Machinery Division, Ankado, looked at Sui and shook his head. And even if we can maintain this efficiency throughout the year, the output still can't meet the demand. After all, our New Flyer's products will always be in short supply. We can only sell as much as we produce. Ankado turned his head and looked at the other people in the conference room. He smiled and spread his hands. Everyone, am I right? There was a burst of laughter in the conference room. Yeah, our Chamber of Commerce's products have always been snatched by people. We can't sell enough no matter how much we produce. Of course you're right. Our department still has hundreds of thousands of orders. Even if we don't take orders from now on, we still have things to do next year. Haha, other chambers of commerce are worried about how to sell their products, but our Chamber of Commerce is worried about how to make them. Suyi's gaze swept across the faces of everyone in the room. Seeing the relaxed expressions on everyone's faces, even the usually silent and solemn financial manager Seabass had a smile on his square face. He couldn't help but smile. Indeed, the other merchant guilds on this continent were worried about how to sell their products, but New Flyer had always been worried about not having enough to sell. Moreover, from the statistics that Kennard had just handed over, none of the departments in the Chamber of Commerce had completed their orders. All of them were in a state of severe production shortage. Even the Household Magic Machine Department, which was in the worst situation, still had more than 3,000 orders for various types of goods. The total value of the orders exceeded a shocking 20 million gold coins. Even if the Household Magic Machine Department maintained its high efficiency this month, it would take at least half a year to complete these orders. The Household Magic Machine Department could be considered the longest and most complete department in New Flyer. It was also the department with the largest scale. If it felt powerless in the face of such a huge order, there was no need to mention the other departments that were inferior to it. But in any case, having too many orders and not being able to sell products were two completely different things. This kind of pressure on production could be considered a blessing in disguise. If it were any other chamber of commerce on the continent, they would be envious of New Flyer. Of course, the other chambers of commerce couldn't be envious even if they wanted to. The magic machine industry was currently becoming more and more important in the signs. Magic machine products were extremely popular in almost every country. New Flyer was the representative chamber of commerce that led the magic machine industry. Not to mention that only New Flyer could produce many special magic machines, even if there were many other chambers of commerce that could produce household magic machines. New Flyer's products represented the best quality and the highest standard, far surpassing the other chambers of commerce's household magic machines. Therefore, it wasn't strange that New Flyer's products were being sought after and even fought over. This was completely due to the suppression of technology and accumulation. The other chambers of commerce had no choice but to accept this. Because of this, New Flyer's annual profits would increase greatly compared to the previous year. After Arch Magus Levin Hasek fell 5 years ago, the magic machine industry swept across the entire continent. Within these 5 years, New Flyer's annual profits had increased at an astonishing rate. At the end of last year, New Flyer's annual profits had exceeded a shocking 80 million gold coins. And this year, the annual financial report that Seabass had just handed to Sue E clearly showed that New Flyer's annual sales had reached an astonishing 270 million gold coins. As for the total profits, it was 100 million and 3,740,000 gold coins. It had actually exceeded 100 million gold coins. Although Sue E had already mentally prepared himself for this before receiving the financial report, New Flyer's business was still very good. After all, New Flyer's growth this year was still very good. It wasn't strange for their annual profits to have another breakthrough. But when he saw that the figures had actually broken 100 million gold coins, Sue E couldn't help but be shocked. It had to be known that even the Kanla Empire, the most powerful nation in the signs, claimed to have the highest annual revenue in signs, but last year's annual revenue didn't even reach 200 million gold coins. In other words, just the annual profits of New Flyer alone was equivalent to more than half of the annual revenue of the Kanla Empire. Think about it, if there was a company on Earth whose annual revenue was half of the annual revenue of the most powerful nation, how ridiculous would that be? However, if this situation were to happen on Earth, it would simply be impossible. This was because the social structure of Earth was completely different from that of signs. Every nation on Earth had extremely strong control over their own nation, so the influence of a single company was ultimately limited. However, it was different on signs. This continent was still in a semi-slave and semi-feudal society. The so-called nations were actually just a collection of large nobles. Even the king or emperor of a nation was only the most powerful of the large nobles in the nation. Although they had strong control over their own nation, it was impossible for them to have complete control over their own nation like those on Earth. Of course, not every nation on Earth could do this. Therefore, it wasn't strange for a private organization to appear on signs whose strength was close to or even surpassing that of a nation. For example, the number 1 chamber of commerce on the continent, the Chimera Chamber of Commerce, was said to have an annual income that far exceeded the annual revenue of the Kanla Empire. The Chimera Chamber of Commerce existed before the Kanla Empire was established and had a history of over 1,000 years. In history, there were 2 emperors of the Kanla Empire who seem to have made a move on the Chimera Chamber of Commerce and taken it under the name of the empire. In the end, both emperors died an unnatural death, but the Chimera Chamber of Commerce still stood tall. In the entire signs, apart from the Chimera Chamber of Commerce, there were 3 other chambers of commerce that could be regarded as the top chamber of commerce on the continent on the same level as the Chimera Chamber of Commerce. Their annual income was also immeasurable. Therefore, it wasn't strange for the New Flyers' annual income to reach half of the annual revenue of the Kanla Empire. Of course, the New Flyer was only established in a small country like the Lampari Kingdom, and its headquarters was only in an unremarkable duchy like the Principality of Constantine. It hadn't even been established for 15 years, but its annual income had already exceeded 100 million gold coins. It had to be said that it was a miracle and could even be called a miracle. If it wasn't for the incomparable influence of the magic machine industry established by the Xinfei Chamber of Commerce, it would have been impossible to achieve this. The current New Flyer could already be called a first-rate chamber of commerce on signs. When Seabass announced the financial report to the upper echelons of the New Flyer under Su Yi's instructions, everyone fell into a frenzy. Among the upper echelons who participated in this year-end meeting, even the one who had worked for the New Flyer for the shortest period of time had already worked for the New Flyer for more than 10 years. It could be said that every one of them had personally seen the New Flyer become stronger through their own hard work. Now that they had personally seen the New Flyer break through to this level, everyone was ecstatic, but they still felt that it was somewhat unreal. After all, the New Flyer had only been established for a short period of time, so short that it didn't even have the time to let a baby grow into an adult. In such a short period of time, the New Flyer had actually grown from nothing to such a colossus. It was truly unbelievable, but this was the truth. Moreover, compared to the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's strong annual income, in terms of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's influence and development potential, as well as their ability to survive on the Signs continent, the Frestec Chamber of Commerce was even better than an old company like the Chimera Chamber of Commerce. As the magic machine industry developed better and better in Signs, the strength of the New Flyer would only grow stronger, to the point where it would become unshakable. Thus, after recognizing this fact, Su Yi finally made up his mind to carry out a reform that he had long wanted to carry out. Chapter 10-13. After the various department heads finished their annual reports and Kennard finished his summary report, everyone's eyes were focused on Su Yi. Even though Su Yi had not interfered with the specific affairs of the Chamber of Commerce for a few years and was in charge of the general direction of the Chamber of Commerce's development, he was still the irreplaceable president of the New Flyer in everyone's eyes. Every year at the year-end summary meeting, only after he gave a summary speech would the meeting finally end. Moreover, at the end of each year's conference, Su Yi would make a summary at the end of the year. He would guide or point out the direction of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's development plan, which would determine the goals the Frestec Chamber of Commerce had to achieve and how to deal with them. Therefore, for the entire upper echelon of the Chamber of Commerce, Su Yi's speech at the year-end summary meeting always had an extremely important meaning. However, this time, when Su Yi opened his mouth, he did not give a summary of the Chamber of Commerce's work like in previous years. Instead, he looked at Kennard and after exchanging a look, he looked around at everyone and slowly said, "The Chamber of Commerce's current development has reached the level I expected and even exceeded my imagination. Therefore, I feel that it is time to restructure the Chamber of Commerce." When the word restructure came out, the conference room suddenly fell into silence. After a while, everyone seemed to react. They looked at each other and couldn't help but whisper to each other. Su Yi patiently waited for a while before knocking on the table to draw everyone's attention back. "I already raised this topic 2 years ago. I think you don't have to be so surprised." Su Yi smiled. "Regarding the reorganization of the Chamber of Commerce, this is inevitable. There is no need to be surprised." But, although Enkado was not yet 40 years old, He could be considered a senior among the upper echelon in the conference room. He took the lead and said, "Sir President, I feel that the Chamber of Commerce is developing very well and is operating very smoothly. There is no need to restructure the Chamber of Commerce, right? What if the reorganization doesn't go smoothly? Wouldn't that be bad?" With Encato taking the lead, everyone else followed suit. "That's right, Sir President. Everyone is doing well together now. Why should we restructure and separate?" "That's right. If we all gather together, it will be much more convenient for us to cooperate with each other. After the reorganization, everyone will be responsible for their own things. If anything happens, just the procedures alone will be a lot more. How troublesome." "Hey, Nasus, you're talking as if it wasn't troublesome to work with your department before. That's because we followed the President's high requirements and strict standards. You can't blame our department for not meeting them, right? Tisk, that's enough." Sui knocked on the table again, interrupting everyone's debate and rebuttal. "Regarding the restructuring of the Chamber of Commerce, I proposed it 2 years ago and gave you 2 years to adapt. From the current results, it seems that you have adapted well." Suyi's gaze swept past the faces of the two people who were arguing just now. Their old faces immediately turned red, and they laughed dryly. "The reason for the restructuring is that the scale of the Chamber of Commerce is getting bigger and bigger. If we continue to maintain the previous organizational structure, it will seriously affect the development of the Chamber of Commerce. Not to mention anything else, if Kennard is responsible for all the department matters, he will die of exhaustion sooner or later." Kennard grinned from the side. "Dying of exhaustion for the Chamber of Commerce is not a bad way to die. I have no objections." Sui could only roll his eyes at him. "You are not a problem, but if Emma, Count, and Sophia know that I have exhausted you to death, they will definitely rush over to kill me." After saying this, Sui turned to look at the others and continued, "I know what you are worried about. It's just that you don't have the experience of being in charge of a department, so you don't have confidence, right?" The department heads that Suyi's gaze swept past smiled embarrassedly. They had indeed been hit by Sui. As department heads, they were already very familiar with being in charge of the internal affairs of a department. However, the restructuring proposed by the President was to directly separate this department from the Chamber of Commerce and establish a branch under the new flyer. It was almost like opening a new Chamber of Commerce. If they were to be in charge of it independently, they really didn't have much confidence. However, apart from these people, the eyes of the other department heads were shining. Their expressions were filled with eagerness and excitement. Although they would face great challenges if they were to be in charge of another Chamber of Commerce, it was also a great opportunity for them. If they grasped it well, they would without a doubt be able to develop in all aspects. With the development of the Frestek Chamber of Commerce, they would be able to stand on the same level as those truly important people. They wouldn't be like right now where they were just department managers of the Frestek Chamber of Commerce. Seeing these people's reactions, Sui inwardly nodded. Not only did he not reject the ambition in his subordinates' hearts, he even admired them. In the current period of rapid development of the magic machine industry, what he needed was people who were willing to take responsibility, as well as people with ambition and courage. These department heads had fully proven their talents over the years. As long as they adapted to their new identities, they would definitely be able to display greater abilities. I don't care if you have confidence or not. This restructuring is imperative. Sui raised his voice. I'll give you a chance to choose. If any of you feel that you can't take on this responsibility, then you can choose to withdraw. I'll find someone else to replace you. Sui quietly waited for a full 3 minutes, but no one in the conference room made a sound. Very good. It seems that you have confidence in yourselves. Sui smiled. But I have to warn you. This doesn't mean that your new positions will be stable in the future. If you can't do it, then I will remove you. Do you understand? Everyone in the conference room looked at each other and nodded. Good. Kennard announced the initial restructuring plan. Kennard nodded. He stood up and picked up a thick plan. After clearing his throat, he said in a clear voice, "According to Sir Chairman's suggestion, the company will undergo the following restructuring in the next period of time. The initial plan is to redivide the departments of the company, which will show the corresponding companies. There will be the Xinfei Household Machine Company, the Xinfei Iron and Alloy Company, and the Xinfei Communications Company ####. Xinfei Magic Car Company, Xinfei Heavy Machinery Association, Xinfei Transport Company. Candra Imperial Magical Industries Administration's Minister Raphael Count of Aylwin was holding the Candra Times in his left hand and the Xinfei Magic Machine Industry Weekly in his right hand. He compared the words on both sides and after confirming that they were the same, he revealed a look of doubt. What about the New Flyer Academy of Magic and the Military Magic Machine Department? They really haven't been separated yet? Sitting on his right was a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 50s. He had a thin face and a pair of extremely spirited eyes. He took a sip of tea and said with a smile, "Sir Count, this is how it should be. Sui has always placed importance on research, calling it the foundation of the magic machine industry, so of course he wouldn't separate it from New Flyer. As for the Military Magic Machine Department, this reason isn't hard to guess, right?" Count of Aylwin gave a sigh and threw the Candra Times and the Xinfei Magic Machine Industry Weekly onto the table. Of course it isn't hard to guess. No one dares offend New Flyer because they have the most powerful military magic machines. Sui wouldn't be stupid enough to throw away such an important thing. But I'm very curious, why did the Fresteck Chamber of Commerce suddenly decide to reorganize and split the departments under them, creating all these new companies? The middle-aged man chuckled and said, "Sir Count, this isn't strange. Once an organization reached a certain scale, it would undergo a restructuring of its organizational structure. New Flyer is already large enough. If Sui still can't think of this, then New Flyer might collapse due to internal conflicts in a few years. But now that he has split these departments, isn't he breaking himself apart?" Count of Aylwin asked in confusion. "No, Sir Count, you should have noticed that these companies all have the words Xinfei in front of them. This means that although they are newly established companies, they are still under the control of New Flyer. The difference from before is probably only in name and structure," the middle-aged man said. This can be imagined. But isn't Sui worried that his control over these companies will weaken in the future? Count of Aylwin was still confused. The middle-aged man frowned slightly and pondered for a moment before shaking his head. I don't really understand either. It's reasonable to say that if Sui wants to restructure the organization, he can do it within New Flyer. There's no need to do it so thoroughly. According to this report, these companies will be responsible for their own profits and losses, so there will be good and bad in the future. The good ones are fine, but what about the bad ones? Is Sui planning to ignore them? The Count of Aylwin and the middle-aged man thought for a while before shaking their heads. The things this Sui does, people really can't see through him. No matter what he does, it always proves that he made the right choice. Count of Aylwin sighed, but then became excited again. But this time, I'm afraid he miscalculated. Clarence, has your Chimera Chamber of Commerce thought about what to do? The middle-aged man called Clarence revealed a dangerous smile. Since New Flyer has exposed its flaws, then of course we won't hold back. Chapter 10:14. Sui let out a soft breath that condensed into a white mist in the air. This year's winter was a bit colder than before. At the beginning of each new year, most of the countries on the signs would fall into the cold of winter. For a country like the Mala Empire that was in the north, the northernmost part of the continent was covered in snow and it was hard to find people. But because the Principality of Constantine was in the southwest, the climate was warm and humid all year round, so it wasn't that cold even in winter. Not to mention not seeing snow, there wasn't even a situation where a breath turned into a cold mist. Looking at the endless sea in the distance, Sui slightly knit his brows. The northern transport fleet that ended in the Mala Empire set off last month. According to the plan, because they would stop in several countries along the way, they would arrive in the Mala Empire next spring. The reason why this trip was so long was mainly to deepen the communication with the countries along the way, while also evaluating their conditions for promoting the magic machine industry. So they would stay in several countries for at least a month. According to the plan, the fleet should be in the Antilla Kingdom to the north of the Sac Kingdom. Based on past experience, the seas of the Kingdom of Karaj wouldn't freeze during this season, but this year's winter was obviously colder than the previous years. Therefore, it was possible that the seas of the Kingdom of Karaj would be even colder. But thinking about it, the company's headquarters hadn't received any reports of the northern transport fleet being obstructed, which meant that they were going smoothly and there weren't any problems. What Sui was really worried about was that he didn't even know where the fleet was. Since the fleet set off until now, it had been close to half a year. With the speed of the fleet, they should be over 10,000 kilometers away, so naturally it was impossible for them to keep in contact. Although the conditions of the fleet far surpassed the Magellan fleet on Earth, anything could happen on the endless sea, so it was impossible to avoid it no matter how good the conditions were. Because there was no communication condition, Sui couldn't do anything even if he was worried, so he could only resign himself to fate. Thinking of this, Sui could not help but look up at the sky above his head. On Earth, due to the invention and popularization of communication satellite technology, people on Earth were finally able to use satellite communication to carry out ultra-long distance communication and even direct positioning. If it was a fleet from Earth, they only needed to be equipped with a satellite positioning system, and the others could easily get in touch with them. There was no need to worry. In the signs, not to mention long-distance communication that was over 10,000 kilometers, even if it was over 1,000 kilometers, it was only limited to the southwest corner of the continent that was covered by the New Flyer's magic signal towers. But the problem of communication on land could be solved by popularizing the magic signal towers and building a complete magic communication network. But what about the endless seas? Is it possible to create something similar to a communication satellite on this continent to solve this problem? Sui frowned. He went through all the magic knowledge in his mind, carefully considering if there was such a possibility. Dad, look! While he was thinking, a clear young girl's voice suddenly sounded in front of Sui, interrupting his thoughts. Sui looked over and revealed a happy smile. Hey, Freya! What do you want me to look at? Freya was already 12 years old this year. Perhaps it was because she had fused with the eastern genes of Suyi's world, but she had already entered puberty and completed her initial development. Not only was she over 1.6 meters tall, reaching the same height as Suyi's chin, her figure had already matured and she had turned into a big girl. Adding in the fact that she had perfectly inherited Steele's appearance, her features were clear and her features were beautiful. She had all the beauty and merits of the mixed-race girls that Sui had seen on Earth before. People who saw her couldn't help praising her. They said that after she grew up, she definitely wouldn't be inferior to Steele's beauty. Look at this. Freya's pretty face was filled with a proud smile. She clenched her right hand into a fist and held it out in front of Sui. Oh? What good stuff are you hiding from me to see? Sui laughed as he stared at her fist. He deliberately thought for a moment and then clasped his hands together. I know. You must have caught a little bug from somewhere, right? Freya was very lively and active since she was young. After she grew up, she became even more cheerful. Sometimes she was even as naughty as a boy. Usually, little girls would be afraid when they saw bugs, but she was very brave and would often catch all kinds of strange bugs to play with. Although Sue was very happy that she could be so cheerful and lively, he was also speechless that she was so curious that she would often play with bugs. Of course, he wouldn't ruin Freya's mood right now. Hee, this time it's not a little bug. Freya raised her right hand a little higher. Dad, look carefully. After saying that, Freya opened her 5 fingers and revealed something in her palm. It was a small fireball. Sue had already sensed the magic fluctuation in her palm, but he didn't say anything. He pretended to be surprised and said, "Wow, Freya, you can actually complete such a small fireball spell. You've improved very quickly." Who knew that Freya didn't appreciate it? She curled her lips and snorted softly. "Dad, who told you to look at this small fireball? You should pay attention to the surrounding magic element." Sue looked at Freya in surprise. After a moment of concentration and sensing the magic elements around the small fireball in Freya's palm, he suddenly showed a trace of surprise. "Freya, you actually completed the magic to stabilize the surrounding space?" If he used his magic to carefully explore the space around this small fireball, he would find that the small fireball in Freya's palm didn't look much different from an ordinary fireball spell, but the magic space around it was completely different from when an ordinary fireball spell was released. Normally, when a mage cast a spell, the process was to use the magic in his body to condense the magic elements in the surrounding space and reorganize them to form a spell. In this way, once the spell was formed, it would inevitably affect the surrounding magic space, causing the surrounding magic elements to be unstable. If it was a particularly powerful spell, it could even indirectly affect the real space by affecting the magic space. The principle of spatial magic was actually based on this point. But the fireball spell that Freya was using now was completely different from an ordinary fireball spell. First of all, the size of this fireball spell was really too small. Its overall shape was about the size of a ping-pong ball, and if one looked carefully, they would find that the color and brightness of this small fireball spell were extremely uniform. There was nothing out of the ordinary about it. This meant that Freya's control of the magic elements contained in this fireball spell was very precise, far beyond the standard of ordinary mages. However, to Sue, the most eye-catching thing was that the magic elements around the fireball spell were actually as stable as in a normal magic space. All the magic elements were flowing normally outside this small fireball spell, as if they weren't affected by this fireball spell at all. To be able to do this, it was far more than just precise control of the magic elements could be described as. Seeing the surprise on Sue's face, Freya raised her head and said proudly, "How is it, Daddy? Aren't I awesome?" "Awesome. Very awesome." Sue generously gave Freya a thumbs up as a compliment. This compliment was from the bottom of Sue's heart, because Freya was indeed worthy of his praise. The topic of reducing the influence of condensed magic on the stability of the surrounding magic space was proposed half a year ago at the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce, and it was only recently that the preliminary research was really completed. In other words, this topic was only half a year from the beginning of the research to the completion of the preliminary research. Now, Freya was able to successfully cast such a spell that could be used as a standard. It could only be said that her magic talent was really amazing. According to Mentor Carmilla's judgment, he even thought that this great-granddaughter of Freya's might have a magic talent that surpassed Sue's. However, to Sue, the so-called magic talent was actually not a clear definition in the circle of mages on this continent. The so-called magic talent, in the traditional sense, was nothing more than a mage's ability to learn magic and improve magic power fast enough. However, since 4 years ago, the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce began to promote the Magic Data Analysis module, and after a few years of continuous research, the previously mysterious magic in the hearts of most people was no longer a mystery, and it had become a subject that even ordinary people could come in contact with and learn. Now, in the signs, even ordinary people who were previously judged to have no magic talent could learn magic as long as they put in the effort to understand the basic course of magic data analysis given by the new flyer. Because of this, Sue E. and many mages in the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce were once condemned by other mages on this continent as heretics, and even caused a wave of resistance. However, as more and more ordinary people emerged in the new flying college to learn magic, the voices of opposition gradually subsided. In just a little more than 3 years, the entire science's understanding of magic had undergone a drastic change. Chapter 10-15. Of course, even though New Flyer's research lowered the standard of learning magic to a level that even ordinary people could touch, but just like the basic subjects on Earth, different people had different levels of proficiency. After the standard of learning magic was lowered, there were also differences between good and bad. It was a new type of magic talent that manifested itself. For example, Freya was one of the most outstanding magicians in the new era who received this new magic education. Because her grandfather was a Grand Magus, her father was the youngest Grand Magus in history, and her mother was a 9th-rank Magus who was only a step away from becoming a Grand Magus. It was impossible for Freya not to come into contact with magic when she was born into such a family. And Freya was indeed very interested in the various miracles of magic since she was young. Since she was 6 years old, Mentor Carmilla, Sue E., and Steele would take time out to teach her magic. But unlike most magicians on the continent, Freya had been mainly learning magic from Sue E. when she was learning magic. She would first do the most basic data analysis of every spell before learning and mastering it. Because of this, Freya's understanding of magic was not like the other magicians in the past who treated it as a vague concept. Instead, she would do a very detailed analysis of every spell she mastered before she could truly master it. The problem with this approach was that Freya had to spend more time and effort to master any new spell than the other magicians in the past. For example, when she first learned the most basic fire spell, Fireball, Freya took a whole week to successfully cast a fireball spell. Compared to the average 3 days that many beginner and level 2 magicians in the new flight college learned fireball, she was much slower. And compared to the genius magicians like Mentor Carmilla, Sue E. and Steele, she was a far cry. But the advantage of this was that after Freya mastered fireball, the first time she successfully cast a fireball spell, she had almost reached the pinnacle of fireball. In terms of the stability of magic elements, the shape of the fireball, and the ratio of mana and magic elements, she could be said to be almost perfect. And after successfully casting the first fireball spell, it meant that Freya had perfectly mastered all the knowledge related to this fireball spell, so she was able to learn other fire spells very quickly. For example, when a normal magician learned fire spells, the first spell they learned was Fireball, because it was the foundation of fire spells. Normally, a magician with a certain level of magic talent would be able to learn it in 2 or 3 days. The second spell was more complicated. One could choose Flame, Fireball, and so on. A normal magician would need about 1 to 2 weeks to master it. However, after Freya spent an entire week to successfully cast Fireball, it only took her less than half an hour to successfully cast the second spell, Inferno, from the time she first came in contact with it to the time she successfully cast it. After that, she only used a mere 3 days to successfully cast all of the level 1 fire magic spells that the Magician's Guild had set for her. When Mentor Carmilla heard the news, she was so excited that she flew a few rounds in the sky before coming down, shouting, "There's another super genius magician in the family." Su-yi was very calm about this, because he was not surprised at all by Freya's reaction. In his opinion, magic was simply using a mage's own mana to attract the corresponding magical elements in the surrounding space. Then, these magical elements would be arranged in a specific way, and through a certain method, the energy contained in the magical elements would be detonated. In essence, this was not much different from lighting a piece of firewood. Although Freya spent a week to master the fireball spell, what she learned in this week was not only about the fireball spell, but also completely grasped the characteristics of the fire magic elements and how to arrange them. That was why she could learn new fire spells so quickly, because to her, as long as she grasped the essence of fire magic, the so-called new spells were nothing more than a new way of arranging the magic elements. If it was not for the restriction of her own mana, Freya could break the rules and directly release a higher-level spell. But speaking of mana, Freya, how's the speed of your mana recently? Su-yi asked Freya. Freya's two slender eyebrows slightly wrinkled, and her expression was a little depressed. It's been very slow these past few months. Father, have I reached the bottleneck period that great-grandpa and Grandpa Turner talked about? What bottleneck period? There's no such thing. Su-yi curled his lips in disdain. The Signs mages had a so-called bottleneck period concept for their own mana cultivation, which meant that when a mage's mana increased to a certain extent, they would find that the increase was very slow, which meant that they had reached a bottleneck, and only after breaking through this bottleneck would they be able to improve greatly. But to Su-yi this was simply nonsense, because this so-called bottleneck period did not conform to the laws of science at all. The so-called mana of a mage was actually the continuous transformation of a mage's body by absorbing the magic elements from the outside world, so that it could have a stronger resonance with the magic elements, and thus control more magic elements. This transformation could be said to be endless, and it was gradual, so there was no so-called bottleneck period at all. As long as one persevered, there would always be an improvement. In the past, those mages who had been stuck at the level of a low-level mage and could not be promoted were limited by their own physique, and also limited by the methods they had mastered to increase their mana, so their mana increased very slowly, and there was even no hope for them to be promoted to a high-level mage in their lifetime. But Freya had inherited the excellent genes from Su-yi and Steel, and also had a lot of powerful mages who had personally created a method for her to cultivate her mana, so she did not have these problems, so she would not have the so-called bottleneck period at all. Come, let me see. After thinking for a while, Su-yi reached out and pressed his hand on Freya's shoulder, and a trace of mana entered her body. After this trace of mana circled around Freya's body, Su-yi did not know whether to laugh or cry as he withdrew his hand. Hey Freya, when was the last time you measured your height? Freya blinked, and was a little puzzled as to why Su-yi suddenly asked this question. It should be half a year ago, Freya replied with uncertainty. How tall was the last time you measured it? Su-yi asked again. I remember it was 1.47 meters. 1.47 meters. Su-yi was originally sitting on a chair, but when he heard Freya's answer, he stood up and pulled Freya in front of him, and used his hand to compare the top of her head to the front of his body, and found that the top of Freya's head was just at the level of his own lower lip. Freya, I can be sure that you have grown taller again. You see, you are now above my chin. I think you must be more than 1.6 meters. Is that so? Freya immediately raised her small fist happily. That's great. Looks like it won't take long for me to be taller than you, Dad. Do you want to surpass me so much? Su-yi smiled and knocked her head, then coughed lightly and said seriously, Freya, I know where the problem of your magic power slowing down is. What problem? Actually, the reason is very simple. It is because you have grown taller. Ah. Freya blinked with a blank face. What does growing taller have to do with my magic power slowing down? Of course it has something to do with it, Su-yi said with a serious face, The so-called training to increase your magic power is to let your body continuously adapt to the magical elements, thus making it easier for your mind to control your body and resonate with the surrounding magical elements, and then mobilize and control them. The method of training your magic power that you have been using before was developed by me, your great-grandfather, and a few great mages according to your appearance when you first started learning magic when you were 6 years old, and it perfectly fits your situation. But now you are at least twice as tall as when you were 6 years old, and your body shape has also changed a lot. If you continue to use the previous method of training your magic power, of course you will not be able to adapt. No wonder I felt that my magic power had slowed down a few years ago. I had always thought that this was a normal phenomenon. Freya muttered and then asked, "Then the reason why I feel that my magic power has been increasing very slowly in the past few months, is it because I have been growing very fast recently?" "Yes." Sui chuckled and patted Freya's head. "Our Freya has grown into a big child, especially in the past 1 or 2 years. You will grow very fast and change a lot." How about this? I will discuss with your great-grandfather and the others in the next 2 days, and we will tailor a new magic power training method for you. What do you think?" "Really? That's great." Freya excitedly pounced on Sui and hugged him. "Daddy, I really like you so much." Sui laughed and lowered his head to look at Freya, who was rubbing her face against his chest. He thought to himself that if the magic power training method that Freya had been using before could be considered a primary school lesson, then the magic power training method that was tailor-made for her should be considered a secondary school lesson. Freya had Mentor Carmilla, himself, and a group of powerful mages in New Flyer as her backing, so he could tailor a magic power training method for her. However, very few mages on this continent had such superior conditions, so when they learned magic, their progress would naturally be much slower. However, this was not the situation that Sui wanted to see. Then how should I promote Freya's method of learning magic? Sui fell into deep thought. Chapter 10:16. Rodman looked at the stubborn Enrique and helplessly sighed. His youngest son had already grown up and actually knew how to refute his father's words. "You really don't want to go?" Rodman asked in a deep voice. "I'm not going," Enrique loudly replied. "What's the point of learning carpentry from my uncle? I want to learn magic." "But you don't have any talent for magic. Didn't the town's magician Musotho tell you this before?" Rodman continued to persuade him. "Humph! He's a liar." Enrique squeezed the newspaper in his hand a couple of times. "It's already stated that anyone can learn magic. Why can't I?" Rodman had a headache as he looked at the Candela Times in Enrique's hand and bitterly smiled in his heart. This damned Sui, this damned New Flyer, they had to come up with this damned, "everyone has talent for magic" statement. It made Enrique, who had already given up on magic, revive from the ashes and want to learn magic again. Magician Musotho had clearly said that Enrique didn't have any talent for magic. He had spent a week and still hadn't learned the simplest magic, so how could he become a truly powerful magician? But when Enrique saw the report in the newspaper, it was as if he had received the will of a true god. He firmly believed it and insisted that he wanted to learn magic. He wasn't willing to follow Rodman's arrangement and learn carpentry from his uncle. In Rodman's eyes, what was the use of learning magic? Even if what Sui and his New Flyer said was true and Enrique really had hope of learning magic, since magician Musotho said that he didn't have any talent for magic, then even if Enrique learned it, he wouldn't be able to become a powerful magician. In Rodman's view, those who couldn't become powerful magicians were simply useless. Rather than wasting time on this, he might as well learn the craft of carpentry. If he could master this craft, even if he might not be able to make a fortune in the future, he would at least not have to worry about food and drink for the rest of his life. However, Enrique pouted and listened to Rodman for a long time, and only showed a look of disdain. Dad, you're already outdated. Who told you that it's useless if you don't become an advanced mage? Enrique patted the newspaper in his hand. Look, New Flyer has been recruiting a large number of low-level sorcerers in the newspaper. Their requirements are not high at all. Also, look at what's written here. After joining the New Flyer, the lowest salary is 20 gold coins a month. Isn't that much better than working for Uncle as a carpenter? Really? Rodman glanced at the newspaper again. However, because he couldn't read at all, he naturally didn't know if Enrique was telling the truth. However, he had heard people say that New Flyer had always paid their workers very well. If they were magicians, it would be natural for them to have a higher salary than ordinary people. It wouldn't be strange for them to earn more than 20 gold coins a month. Alright, it's good that you can work for the Frestec Chamber of Commerce after learning it, but Enrique, first it's a problem if you can learn it or not. The more important problem is, where will you learn it? Where? Enrique stared blankly for a moment, and didn't know how to reply. Although he had heard that New Flyer had set up a new flight college, which specialized in teaching ordinary people about magic machines and magic, the Principality of Constantine, where the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce was located, was more than 2,000 kilometers away from this small village in the central province of the Canla Empire. How could Enrique go there to learn? After thinking for a while, Enrique clenched his fist and shouted, "I want to go to the Principality of Constantine." Rodman looked at him without saying a word. After a moment, Enrique lowered his head in disappointment. He knew very well that it was impossible. Rodman's family was just an ordinary farmer's family in the Canla Empire. Although Rodman, his wife, and Enrique's elder brother all found jobs in factories due to the Empire's vigorous promotion of the magic industry in recent years, their salary was far from that of the New Flyer. In total, it was barely more than 20 gold coins a month. Although this money was enough to greatly change their family's life, and at least they didn't have to worry about filling their stomachs and even had some surplus, it was impossible for this surplus to support Enrique's journey to the Principality of Constantine, which was more than 2,000 kilometers away. Besides, Enrique was only 13 years old this year. Although he was already mature, Rodman wouldn't be at ease to let him leave home and go to such a faraway place alone. And if he let someone accompany him, the cost would be even more terrifying. Rodman's family couldn't afford it no matter what. How good would it be if the New Flyer was in the Canla Empire? Enrique couldn't help but complain. Rodman sighed and smiled bitterly in his heart. Yes, how good would it be if the New Flyer was in the Empire? It was said that because of the New Flyer, the living conditions of the people in the Lampari Kingdom and the Principality of Constantine were countless times better than before. Not only did ordinary people not have to worry about making a living, they even had extra money to pursue a better life. If the New Flyer had appeared in the Canla Empire, or even in the vicinity, then their family might have lived a better life because of the New Flyer. And Enrique could easily enter the new flight college to study. Maybe he really had a chance to realize his dream of becoming a mage. But the New Flyer wasn't here, but more than 2,000 kilometers away. So all these fantasies could only be fantasies. Rodman patted Enrique's shoulder and sighed. "Enrique, Dad doesn't have the ability to send you to such a faraway place to learn magic. Dad is sorry you. Be good, okay?" Enrique pursed his lips and looked at the tired Rodman. The stubbornness on his face had long disappeared. He just nodded lightly and said, "Oh." Looking at the disappointed Enrique, Rodman shook his head helplessly and turned to walk out the door. Although there was still more than an hour before the afternoon shift, he didn't want to continue staying at home to face Enrique. He just wanted to escape first. As soon as he walked out of the door, 3 figures quickly walked towards him. "Elder Adonis, Village Chief Bradley, why are you here?" Rodman asked in surprise. "What's the matter?" After saying that, he looked at the stranger next to the elders and the village chief. He found that this person wasn't from the village. From his appearance, he was about 30 years old and had a capable temperament. He looked like a civil servant of the mayor. Elder Adonis, who was already 67 years old and had a high collar, smiled and waved at Rodman. "Come, let's talk inside." Rodman went back into the house with the three people puzzled. Enrique, who was sitting in the house with his head down, saw Rodman come back with the two people with the highest status in the village and a stranger. He couldn't help but be stunned. "Hey Enrique, don't be in a daze. Go and pour water for the guests, quick." Rodman waved at him and ordered. "No need. Come back." Elder Adonis called Enrique back, and then called him in front of him. He looked him up and down and asked with a smile, "Enrique, are you 10 years old this year?" Enrique looked at him with a baffled expression and then looked at Rodman with a questioning gaze. "Answer the elder's question honestly," Rodman reprimanded. "Oh, Elder, I'm 13 years old this year." 13 years old? That's not bad. Elder Adonis turned his head and looked at the stranger. "Sir Sandy, do you think he meets the requirements?" The stranger called Sandy looked at Enrique with a smile and asked, "Are you willing to learn magic?" Enrique and Rodman were both startled. They were just discussing this question. Why did someone suddenly run over and ask? Elder Village Chief, what's going on?" Rodman interrupted Enrique's answer and asked the two acquaintances. It's like this," Village Chief Bradley said with a smile. "Rodman, do you know the Chimera Chamber of Commerce?" "Of course I do. It's the largest chamber of commerce in our empire," Rodman immediately replied. "But, does this have anything to do with Enrique?" "Yes." Village Chief Bradley nodded. The Chimera Chamber of Commerce recently decided to choose some places in the empire to open a basic magic academy. One of them is in Ano City. This academy will not only recruit students in the city, but also in the villages and towns outside the city. Our village has now been allocated 5 places, so Elder Adonis and I thought that your son has always wanted to learn magic, so we asked him if he was willing to go. The Chimera Chamber of Commerce is opening a basic magic academy. Rodman scratched his head, feeling confused. Why did they find my son? Is his talent for magic actually very high? No, this has nothing to do with magic talent. The Chimera Chamber of Commerce is opening these basic magic academies to recruit ordinary people to learn magic. It has nothing to do with magic talent. Rodman looked at Enrique in surprise. Enrique was stunned for a moment before turning around to take the candela daily that he had thrown on the cabinet. "Isn't this what the new flyer has been talking about? Is the Chimera Chamber of Commerce going to do this too?" "Yes, this is a project that the Chimera Chamber of Commerce and the new flyer have cooperated to officially promote in the Canla Empire, so you don't have to suspect anything," Sandy said seriously. "Mr. Rodman, I am the person sent by the Chimera Chamber of Commerce to temporarily be in charge of the establishment of the Ano Basic Magic Industry Academy. If you have any questions, you can ask me." Rodman stayed for a while before turning around to look at Enrique, who was full of anticipation and excitement. He swallowed his saliva and asked Sandy, "I have a very important question to ask." "Please ask." "Do I have to pay to enter this academy?" "Of course, we don't do it for free. It's normal to charge tuition," Sean replied with a smile. Rodman's heart sank. After a pause, he asked hesitantly, then, "Can I ask how much it is?" Sandy smiled as if he knew what Rodman was thinking. "I don't think you need to worry too much about this. The reason why our Chimera Chamber of Commerce and the new flyer are cooperating to promote this project is to cultivate more talents in the magic industry in the Empire, so we will charge a part of the tuition. But because of the strong support of our Chimera Chamber of Commerce, the price is very cheap." Rodman and Enrique immediately stared at him with bright eyes. Sandy smiled and stretched out 3 fingers. "It's only 30 gold coins a year. How about it? Mr. Rodman, do you think it's acceptable?" Rodman's eyes instantly lit up. Under Enrique's nervous gaze, he replied loudly, "Of course! Of course it's acceptable." Chapter 10:17. Of course, Enrique wasn't the only student that was invited to join the Chimera Chamber of Commerce's basic magic machine industry schools. This was because this time, the Chimera Chamber of Commerce was building 43 similar grade basic magic machine industry schools in the Canla Empire. Each school would recruit 200 students at the beginning, and the total number of students would surpass 10,000. Moreover, according to the plan announced by the Chimera Chamber of Commerce, they would be cooperating with the Canla Empire for a long time. They would be promoting the basic magic machine industry knowledge that these basic magic machine industry schools represented in the empire. With the Canla Empire's large territory and scale, this plan was very large. The amount of money, manpower, and other investments involved was a shocking astronomical figure. Why did the Chimera Chamber of Commerce suddenly become this active? Kennard was very curious about this. These fellows were always indifferent to us before, but now they're taking the initiative to cooperate with us. They're also this active and willing to spend money. It really doesn't make sense. Perhaps they suddenly thought it through. Sui said with a smile. Of course, if we really have to talk about it, I think that the Canla Empire's high level isn't willing to see our company infiltrate too much. Things like basic education are very important to a country, so it isn't strange for the Canla Empire to want it in their hands. That does make sense. Kennard nodded. After thinking for a bit, he picked up another document and gave it to Sui. It makes sense to cooperate on basic education, but I feel that there's a problem with this. Is that so? Sui took the document and found that this was an official business letter sent by the Chimera Chamber of Commerce. The content was a cooperation agreement that a branch of the Chimera Chamber of Commerce that specialized in the lumber business had submitted to the Shinfei Heavy Machinery Association. The content of the agreement was that the Chimera Lumber Chamber of Commerce hoped that the Shinfei Heavy Machinery Association could make some heavy magic machines for them, specially used to cut and transport lumber. Is there a problem with this? Sui looked at Kennard in surprise. Designing special magic machines for other companies, isn't this a very normal thing? The problem is at the back. Kennard turned the last page of the document for Sui with a calm face before pointing at the middle part. Sui looked at it and instantly knit his brows. So in this cooperation agreement, the Chimera Lumber Chamber of Commerce proposed that in order to maintain a good long-term relationship, they hoped that both sides would exchange 5% of shares to stabilize their relationship. If it was just based on this condition, the Shinfei Heavy Machinery Association actually had a large advantage. Because the Chimera Chamber of Commerce was the largest company on the continent and the Chimera Lumber Chamber of Commerce was a large company that monopolized the lumber business of many countries, including the Canla Empire. Whether it was in terms of scale, production value, or other aspects, they far surpassed the Shinfei Heavy Machinery Association. It was the same 5% of shares, but the value was completely different. But if one looked carefully, they would find that the Chimera Lumber Chamber of Commerce also requested that in order to guarantee that the various magic machines made by the Shinfei Heavy Machinery Association for collecting lumber would meet their requirements, they hoped that they could participate in the research of these magic machines. This condition, it could be considered that everyone knew what they were thinking. It was very clear that the Chimera Lumber Chamber of Commerce wanted to participate in this research process. There was no doubt that it was to obtain the relevant technology or to gain some experience. Hey, the Chimera Chamber of Commerce really is willing to part with this. Sui couldn't help revealing a smile. Just to obtain a bit of technology, they're actually willing to exchange 5% of their shares. Tell me, if we're willing to give them all the heavy magic machine technology, would they be willing to give the Chimera Lumber Chamber of Commerce to us? Of course they're willing. Kennard said without any hesitation. Even if we obtain all the shares, it's impossible for us to operate as smoothly as the Chimera Lumber Chamber of Commerce before, so we'll still suffer a loss in the end. But they can use this to obtain the technology that they want the most. In the long run, it's a good deal for them. Do you think this? Sui looked at Kennard. Kennard was stunned. Could it be that Sir Chairman doesn't think this way? Me? Sui looked at the contract in his hand before throwing it on the table and stretching himself. What I think isn't important because this isn't related to me. Kennard was stunned before anxiously saying in a loud voice, Sir Chairman, how is this not related to you? I think that this is a plot by the Chimera Chamber of Commerce against our new flyer. The Chimera Chamber of Commerce is best at using this method to nibble away at other companies bit by bit. They've already done this countless times. Is that so? Since you know this, could it be that you'll let them succeed? Sui asked back with a smile. This. Kennard thought about it before forcefully shaking his head. Of course I won't let them easily take away our hard work. I will definitely stop them. Sui revealed a smile. Kennard, I just want to remind you that there are times when you need to look further. As for the other suggestions, Sui spread out his hands. Since this is a cooperation agreement proposed by the Chimera Lumber Chamber of Commerce to the Xinfei Heavy Machinery Association, then the decision lies in the hands of the Xinfei Heavy Machinery Association. As the CEO of the New Flyer, you can make your own suggestions, but you don't have to do anything else. Let them handle it themselves. How can that be? If we let them face the Chimera Chamber of Commerce alone, sooner or later they will be swallowed whole. Kennard said agitatedly. Then let them be swallowed up. The smile on Sui's face suddenly disappeared and his expression turned cold. Separating them is to let them take the test alone. If they can't get through it, then it means that they aren't qualified. But Sir President, if the Chimera Chamber of Commerce succeeds this time, they will definitely make a move on other departments. I'm worried. If we don't deal with it well, our entire Chamber of Commerce may be swallowed up by the Chimera Chamber of Commerce. Don't worry, even if the Chimera Chamber of Commerce can swallow the other departments of our Chamber of Commerce, as long as the Academy of Magic and the Military Magic Machine Department are still in control, or as long as I'm still here, the New Flyer will always be here. Feeling the strong confidence in Sui's tone, Kennard was silent for a moment before slowly nodding. Sir President was right. Although the New Flyer was now countless times larger than before, the core was still technology, or rather, Sir President. As long as Sir President was here, the New Flyer would always be here. This was something that the Chimera Chamber of Commerce couldn't swallow, no matter what. Thinking of this, the worry in Kennard's heart suddenly faded a lot. After looking at the cooperation agreement in his hand, he smiled and said, Okay, Sir President, I'll deal with this matter at my discretion. Sui shook his head slightly. He thought that Kennard still couldn't get rid of his fixed way of thinking. Perhaps it was because the New Flyer rose too quickly and developed too quickly that even Kennard, the CEO, didn't have time to change his way of thinking. He still always placed himself in a very low position. When facing the Chimera Chamber of Commerce, the largest chamber of commerce on the continent, he would always be overly nervous and cautious. Of course, this didn't mean that Sui felt that Kennard's judgment was wrong. On the contrary, he felt that Kennard's judgment was very accurate. The Chimera Chamber of Commerce definitely had ulterior motives towards the New Flyer. But with the current status of the New Flyer in the signs, as well as the popularity of the magic machine industry led by the New Flyer, not only the Chimera Chamber of Commerce, but perhaps any Chamber of Commerce, country, or even person on the continent would have ulterior motives towards the New Flyer. It was fine to be cautious, but it wouldn't be worth it to delay their normal development. For example, although the Chimera Chamber of Commerce clearly had ulterior motives, in Sui's opinion, the Chimera Chamber of Commerce had taken the initiative to promote the basic knowledge of the magic machine industry in the Kanla Empire in order to strengthen their relationship with the new flyer. As a result, they had invested a large amount of money and humans to establish a large number of magic machine industry academies in the Kanla Empire. In fact, they were doing Su-E a big favor. The history of the Industrial Revolution on Earth had proven an ironclad fact, and that was that talents would always forget to climb higher. Even if the Kanla Empire nurtured a large number of talents related to the magic machine industry in the future, if the Kanla Empire's magic machine industry system wasn't perfect enough and the level wasn't high enough, then these talents would eventually flow towards the new flyer. Therefore, in the end, it was very likely that the Kanla Empire would be nurturing talents for the new flyer. This was very obvious on the side of mages. Ever since Archmagus Levin Hasek had fallen in the new flyer 5.5 years ago, all the mages on the continent had turned their attention to the new flyer. As a result, the number of mages employed in the new flyer had increased explosively. The number of low-level mages in the Academy of Magic and the factories had exceeded 10,000. Now, even Archmagus Sarandal Cray had taken the initiative to work for the new flyer. At the same time, the new flyer had maintained a cooperative relationship with 13 of the 25 other archmages, allowing these 13 archmages to assist the new flyer in magic research projects. Even the 12 other archmages who didn't have a clear cooperative relationship expressed their interest in the new flyer. In fact, it was said that more than half of them had begun to secretly conduct research on magic machines. Therefore, it could be said that the new flyer was now the organization that made the best use of the resources of mages on the continent. It had even surpassed the Sorcerers' Guild. Su-E believed that this situation wouldn't only occur in the field of mages in the future, but also in all the talents related to the magic machine industry. Of course, this was on the premise that the new flyer's technology remained at the forefront. Chapter 10:18. In the blink of an eye, it was June. The early summer heat had just spread across the signs when the demand for household magic machines for summer couldn't be suppressed in the cities of the various countries. At this time of the year, the new flyer's home magic machine division would receive large amounts of orders from countless countries. They had already prepared 2 months ago to welcome the arrival of the summer sales peak. This year was naturally no exception. Just in early June, the original New Flyers Home Magic Machine Division, that had just been renamed the Xinfei Household Magic Machine Chamber of Commerce, had received orders for magic fans, magic refrigerators, magic freezers, and other household magic machines. There were over 100,000 of them, with a total of over 2 million gold coins. Adding in the 3 million gold coins worth of orders they received last month, the Xinfei Household Magic Machine Chamber of Commerce's summer sales would reach a new high, breaking through 10 million gold coins in one fell swoop. Compared to last year's total sales of 7,300,000 gold coins, there was no doubt that the Xinfei Household Magic Machine Chamber of Commerce had a large increase this year. However, there were 3 things that happened in June that made the people of the Xinfei Household Magic Machine Chamber of Commerce not happy at all. The first thing was that in the eastern province of the Kanla Empire, there was an accident with Xinfei's magic fans. When the magic fans that were sent to the eastern province of the Kanla Empire last month were being used, there were large amounts of screws that came off that caused the outer casing to loosen. The more serious thing was that not only did the outer casing loosen, the blades inside also loosened. The blades that were spinning at high speeds flew out and caused many injuries. Once this matter was spread, it was immediately reported by the Kanla Times and many other newspapers in the Kanla Empire, instantly creating a stir in the signs. Before this, although there were problems with the magic machines produced by the Xinfei Chamber of Commerce, they were all very normal failures and the frequency was very low. Compared to the household magic machines produced by the other magic machine companies, the Xinfei brand household magic machines had always been high performance and high quality. But this time, the new Flyers magic fans had actually malfunctioned on a large scale, which could be considered the first time in history. When this matter was reported, most people didn't believe it at first. This was because the position of the new Flyers magic machines in people's minds had been confirmed for many years, so people didn't believe that something like this would suddenly happen. But whether it was the Canla Times or the other large newspapers had reported it in detail, so people had no choice but to believe it. Moreover, when the Xinfei Household Magical Machinery Chamber of Commerce made a public statement, they confirmed that this matter had happened and didn't deny it, so naturally it was true. But when the Xinfei Household Magical Machinery Chamber of Commerce confirmed this matter, they also said that any Xinfei brand household magic machine would be strictly tested before being sold, ensuring that there were no quality problems. So this kind of large-scale accident should be caused by other reasons. The Xinfei Household Magical Machinery Chamber of Commerce would cooperate with the Canla Empire to investigate this matter and confirm the cause of this accident. Moreover, the Xinfei Household Magical Machinery Chamber of Commerce also said that no matter what the cause of this accident was, the Xinfei Household Magical Machinery Chamber of Commerce would be responsible for this accident and would compensate the buyers who suffered losses from this accident. After this statement was released, it immediately attracted the praise of countless people. Before this, there had never been a company like the Frestec Chamber of Commerce on the Signs continent, taking care of their products as seriously as they did with the products they sold. Since you already bought the product, then the problem was your own problem. This was the attitude that almost all the companies in Signs followed. This time, the Xinfei Household Magical Machinery Chamber of Commerce used this method, which could be said to be the first in Signs. Because of this statement, the people who didn't trust the Xinfei brand household magic machines because of this incident began to approve of the Xinfei brand household magic machines even more. The second matter wasn't just related to the product, but also the technology needed to make the product. Before summer came each year, the new Flyers Home Magical Machinery Division would announce some information about the household magic machines ahead of time. It would show that the Xinfei brand household magic machines had made a breakthrough and would be officially released. For example, in the middle of May this year, the newly established Xinfei Household Magical Machinery Chamber of Commerce had announced through the newspapers and the large-scale magic illusion projectors in the various cities that New Flyer had made a major breakthrough in the magic air conditioner, so they had added a new timer function. This function allowed the user of the magic air conditioner to set a time limit for the magic air conditioner. When the time was up, it would automatically turn off and stop operating. This function was without a doubt very practical and popular because the magic air conditioner consumed a lot of magic and it wasn't good for adjusting the temperature if it was always turned on. So if there was a timer function, one wouldn't need to wake up in the middle of the night to turn it off. After the Frestec Household Magic Machine Company announced this new technology, almost all the newspapers praised it. They all said that the Frestec Chamber of Commerce really was a top company that led the development of the magic machine industry. They kept developing new technology and promoting the development of the magic machine industry. Chairman Su had always emphasized the importance of technology to the magic machine industry. Under his leadership, New Flyer kept developing this point, so New Flyer's prospects were very good. Everyone thought that this summer would be the same as last year, with New Flyer's products dominating most of the household magic machine market. In terms of performance, quality, and technology, they would crush the household magic machines of other companies and other brands. However, after entering June, there was a change in this situation. On June 3rd, a household magic machine company from the Lampari Kingdom that specialized in magic refrigerators suddenly announced that they had developed a new technology for household refrigerators. It could increase the efficiency of household refrigerators by over 20% and increase the temperature, allowing more items to be stored and the effects to be better. This greatly exceeded everyone's expectations. Because New Flyer had released all the household magic machine technology to the public, there were many household magic machine companies on the continent. But these companies only used the technology provided by New Flyer, so they could only follow in the footsteps of New Flyer, trying their best to imitate Xinfei's brand of household magic machines. Even if there were innovations, most of them were innovations in terms of appearance and some were innovations in terms of structure. As for innovations in terms of technology, there had never been any. Now that this company from the Lampari Kingdom had increased the efficiency and temperature of the magic refrigerator, this meant that they had a deeper grasp of the core technology of these two magic refrigerators. They could actually make a product that surpassed Xinfei's magic refrigerator in terms of performance. This was the first time in the 15 years that New Flyer had been established that there was a magic machine company that surpassed New Flyer in terms of technology, so naturally it attracted the attention of countless people. Chairman Su Yi had always announced to the public that he hoped that the other companies would invest more in magic machine technology and work together to develop it. Now that there was a company that had advanced in terms of technology, how would he react? However, Su Yi didn't respond to this at all. Only the Xinfei Household Magical Machinery Chamber of Commerce made a special announcement, congratulating this company. But while congratulating them, the Xinfei Household Magical Machinery Chamber of Commerce also expressed that they hoped that this company would be cautious when using this new technology. This was because any new technology needed large amounts of research, otherwise there would be many problems. The Xinfei Household Magical Machinery Chamber of Commerce also said that if this company had any problems with this technology, they could contact the Xinfei Household Magical Machinery Chamber of Commerce at any time. The Xinfei Household Magical Machinery Chamber of Commerce was willing to provide technical support and promote the development of this technology together. After this, just 3 days later, on the 6th of June, a company from the Kingdom of Ruhr also made a statement, saying that they had made a breakthrough in their research on the magic water heater. Their newly developed magic water heater had a newly developed heat circulation system, which allowed the water to be kept at the right temperature after entering the bathtub. They didn't need to worry about the water cooling down after a while, so they didn't need to reheat it. This was without a doubt a very convenient system because it solved the biggest problem for people who like to take baths. This technology was something that the Xinfei brand magic water heater didn't have. In just a single day, a company from the Lampari Kingdom announced that after a long period of research, they had finally made a breakthrough in terms of the magic stove. The new magic stove they had developed could adjust the heat of the fire at the same time, and it could provide 2 flames at the same time. This meant that you could choose to turn on the magic stove and cook the soup or the dish at the same time. There was no doubt that this would save a lot of time and greatly increase the efficiency of cooking. This technology was also something that the Xinfei brand magic stove couldn't provide. In less than a week, there were 3 companies that announced 3 technologies that the Xinfei brand didn't have. There were many people who couldn't help thinking that the giant advantage that the New Flyer had over the other companies in terms of technology didn't exist anymore, right? Chapter 10:19. The third matter was related to a country called the Drow Kingdom to the east of the Kanla Empire. The reason why this country was called the Drow Kingdom was because more than 90% of its citizens were Drow. Because of this, the Drow Kingdom had a very high degree of cohesion and unity. Although their national strength was average, very few countries dared to provoke them in the east of the continent. When the New Flyer was promoting the magic machine industry in the Drow Kingdom, everything was normal and the progress was smooth. Last year, when the New Flyer conducted a magic machine industry evaluation, the Drow Kingdom was rated as a third-grade magic machine industry by the New Flyer because of its rapid development. It was considered one of the top countries in the signs. Therefore, the Frestech Chamber of Commerce had transferred some military magic machine technology to the Drow Kingdom, as well as some high-level military magic machines to the Drow Kingdom, greatly increasing the military strength of the Drow Kingdom. Perhaps it was because of this that the Drow Kingdom gained confidence. Last autumn, the Drow Kingdom suddenly launched an invasion against the two neighboring countries, the Kingdom of Provence and the Duchy of Safina. They achieved complete victory and completely annexed the Kingdom of Provence and the Kingdom of Provence in just 3 months. This shocked the large countries in the east of the Signs. The two successful invasions launched by the Drow Kingdom not only shocked the other countries, but also gave them a warning. It was clear that the Drow Kingdom's strength was only average in the past, but after becoming a strategic partner of the New Flyer, it only took a few years of development for it to become a powerful military country in the east of the Signs. If the other countries didn't want to face the same fate as the Kingdom of Provence and the Duchy of Safina, there was only one way to go. That was to cooperate with the New Flyer and strive to raise the level of their magic machine industry as soon as possible. This way, they could obtain the support of the military magic machines from the New Flyer. Not to mention invading other countries, at least they wouldn't have to face a country like the Drow Kingdom and be beaten up. Thus, after the Drow Kingdom's 2 successful invasions, the biggest beneficiary was the New Flyer. In the first half of this year, all the countries in the eastern part of Signs that had not been enthusiastic about cooperating with New Flyer took the initiative to request cooperation from New Flyer. They all became strategic partners of New Flyer. Thus, the situation in the Signs was finally stabilized with the intervention of the New Flyer. All the countries began to focus on developing their domestic magic industries and became prosperous. Originally, if the situation didn't change, even if the countries in the east of Signs couldn't catch up with the countries in the southwest corner of the continent, they wouldn't fall behind the countries in the southeast corner of the continent, including the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom. However, the situation in this world would never remain the same. At the beginning of March this year, the Drow Kingdom suddenly erupted in civil strife. The rebel army led by the Drow Kingdom's current king's younger brother, Prince Varric, started a rebellion with the slogan, "The fate of the Drow Kingdom cannot be decided by outsiders." Moreover, he obtained the support of most of the Drow Kingdom's army and overthrew the king's rule in one fell swoop, ascending to the throne. After he ascended to the throne and took control of the situation in the Drow Kingdom, he shouted the slogan, "The honor of the Drow Kingdom cannot be tarnished by outsiders," and directly announced that all the magic industry in the Drow Kingdom would be taken over by the Drow Kingdom. At the same time, the citizens of the Drow Kingdom also erupted in a wave of opposition to the outside forces. Under the voices of the citizens, with the New Flyer as the leader, the companies from the Lampari Kingdom, the Roar Kingdom, the Drake Duchy, and other countries in the southwest corner of the continent all became vampires from the southwest corner of the continent. Right now, they wanted to drive out these people who were sucking the blood of the Drow Kingdom's citizens to fatten themselves. This wave only appeared sporadically at the beginning, but after entering May, it became more and more intense until the end of May and the beginning of June. There were riots in the Drow Kingdom against the countries in the southwest corner of the continent. Not only were the factories and shops of the various magic machine companies represented by the New Flyer destroyed, the staff members were also brutally treated. The other data wasn't clear, but according to the data released by the Frestech Chamber of Commerce, of the 736 staff members in the Drow Kingdom, 342 staff members had been confirmed dead in this riot. There were 175 staff members who had lost contact, and only 219 staff members had escaped ahead of time. According to the description of the 219 staff members who escaped, during the riot, the civilians of the Drow Kingdom carried out all kinds of inhumane atrocities against the people from the southwest corner of the continent. They couldn't bear to think about it. Once this news was spread, it immediately shook the entire continent. In fact, many people were not particularly concerned about the riots in the Drow Kingdom. This was because the people who were targeted and subjected to atrocities had nothing to do with most people. What most people were concerned about was the reaction of the New Flyer and the countries in the southwest corner of the continent, especially the reaction of the New Flyer. Ever since Levin Hasek attacked the New Flyer 5 years ago and was accidentally killed, no one on this continent dared to offend the New Flyer again. And now, not only did the Drow Kingdom directly annex a large amount of the New Flyer's assets on the official level, but they also committed such atrocities on the civilian level. It was obviously impossible for the New Flyer not to retaliate. However, the Drow Kingdom was more than 4,000 kilometers away from the Principality of Constantine, where the New Flight Commerce main base was located. How could the New Flyer retaliate? ###, Sir Chairman, look, this is the change curve of the reaction between different magic elements that I've recently researched. Sanchali pointed at the complicated pattern drawn on the large blackboard as he looked at Su-Yi with a face of expectation. Through this change curve, we can find that the magic elements in the magic space and the magic elements in the magic crystals all follow a certain law. If we use this law well, we can control them more precisely. Su-Yi looked at the excited Sanchali and did his best to suppress the shock in his heart. This fellow Sanchali really was a genius mage who had developed a method of controlling magic elements that was similar to programming a long time ago. He had only proposed this vague concept last year, and he had only used a year to form a basic theoretical system of this scale. Just as Sanchali said, if they could completely understand the law of the reaction between different magic elements, then they wouldn't be far from being able to control them more precisely. If they could precisely control the magic elements, the magic machine research that Su-Yi thought was still in the macro stage would be able to enter the spectator stage and begin more spiritual research. Or to put it another way, if the researchers of the Academy of Magic and the Magic Machine Development Center were mainly studying the applications of magic machines, then what Sanchali was doing now was the true theory of magic machines. Don't ignore theory research because any practical application was based on theory research. The magic machines that New Flyer developed before were mainly based on the large amounts of mechanical theory that Su-Yi brought from Earth. As for the use of magic, most of the time it was just a simple power output. Up to this point, the only two things that Signs had a large amount of native magic knowledge were the magic communication network and the magic illusion projection system. Compared to this, Sanchali's current research was even closer to the essence of magic research than these two. When the New Flight College taught normal people how to grasp magic, they mostly used the magic theory that Sanchali had developed. Under his brand new magic theory, any magic was no longer mysterious. Instead, it had become something that could be used to analyze menstrual cycles. After teacher Carmilla and Su-Yi personally improved it, it became an opportunity for normal people to grasp magic. Stop! Su-Yi suddenly looked up to cut Sanchali off. Sanchali, do you still remember the magic toy you had in your hand when we first met? If I remember correctly, you've already used the theory you just mentioned on that toy, right? Sanchali revealed a faint smile. Sir Chairman, you still remember. Yes, I did use this theory. But I only had a vague idea of this theory back then. It wasn't until a few years ago when I was researching the magic communication network with a colleague that I gradually reorganized this concept and obtained a more thorough conclusion, which is what you're seeing now. Su-Yi nodded. After thinking for a bit, he asked, "From what you just described, can I understand it like this?" Let's put it this way, essentially, if I ask you to design a device and connect it to a magic illusion projector, can you project the calculation of 1 plus 1 equals 2 through the illusion in 1 second? Sanchely knit his brows with a bit of hidden bitterness. Sir Chairman, aren't you looking down on me too much? Connecting it to a magic illusion projector isn't that hard at all right? As for 1 plus 1 equals 2, is there a need to show such a simple calculation? The automatic production magic machines I designed for the company many years ago didn't even have this much technology, alright? This means that 1 plus 1 equals 2 isn't a problem, but what about 10 calculations in a single second? 100 times? 1,000 times, 10,000 times, 100,000 times, 1,000,000 times, or even more? Chapter 10:20. Seeing that Sanchely was deep in thought, Sue-Yi smiled and got up to leave Sanchely's private laboratory. The study of magical elements and the microscopic aspects of magic was a very big topic. With the extremely rough magical theory level of science, it was far from being able to reach such a level of precision. He only proposed this research request to Sanchely to give him a direction of research. He didn't think that Sanchely would be able to achieve results in a short period of time. Speaking of which, Sue-Yi wanted to shift the magic research on this continent from the previous feeling to relying on precise data and thorough logical theory. It wasn't an easy task to begin with. It was obviously not enough to rely on Sanchely alone. It would be best if he could change the mindset of all the mages on this continent and get them to research together. However, this was a huge problem. The magicians with high achievements on the science continent were all deeply influenced by the magic theories of the past, so they wouldn't easily change their way of thinking. Take Mentor Carmilla for example. Even though she had known Sue-Yi for more than 10 years and had been influenced by Sue-Yi's various data analysis methods, she still had a lot of traditional mage's mindset. This had a significant impact on her research on high-end magical theories. And if one were to look at Cray the Sorcerer who had just joined New Flyer, this problem would be even more serious. It had been almost a year since Cray the Sorcerer joined New Flyer, but he was still in the stage of adapting. He hadn't completely changed his mindset and truly integrated into New Flyer. This caused him to spend most of the year learning and adapting to this new way of researching magic. In fact, he hadn't been able to make any contributions to New Flyer. Of course, this couldn't be rushed. Sue-Yi knew very well that to truly change the way the mages on Signs thought about magic and their way of researching magic, it would probably take generations or even generations of hard work. Whether it was Mentor Carmilla or Cray the Sorcerer, they could only lay down a theoretical foundation at best. The ones who could really play a role were probably the children who had joined the Magic Industry Academy and received new magical theory education from a young age. Thinking of this, Sue-Yi sighed helplessly. If he wanted to produce results on this, he was afraid that it would take at least 1 or 2 decades to see preliminary result. And by that time, he would already be an old man. Mr. President, are you still worried about your colleagues in the Kingdom of Drow? A voice suddenly sounded, interrupting Sue-Yi's drifting thoughts. Don't worry, the guards are ready. As long as you give the order, they can set off. Oh! Sue-Yi came back to his senses and looked at the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's human Vice Captain Duluth in front of him. Then he looked at the guards gathered at the training base and gave a nod. After expansion and development, the New Flyer Guards had become a huge army with a total number of more than 20,000 people. In addition, they were equipped with a large number of new high-end military magic machines, making the combat strength of the New Flyer Guards far superior to the armies of other countries. Although only 3,000 people were sent to the Kingdom of Drow this time, Sue-Yi believed that they could complete the mission easily. Duluth, repeat the objective of this mission. Sue-Yi said in a deep voice. Yes, Mr. President. Duras saluted, straightened his body, and replied loudly, "The goal of this operation is to go to the Kingdom of Drow to rescue the trapped colleagues of the Chamber of Commerce, as well as to provide assistance to the staff of other chambers of commerce in the same industry as much as possible, and to carry out an effective attack on the Kingdom of Drow to suppress the riots in the Kingdom of Drow." "Very well, you remember the goal very clearly, but do you know how to do it?" Sui asked again. Duras pondered for a moment, then looked straight at Sui. "Please enlighten me, Mr. President." Sui's lips curled slightly, revealing a dangerous smile. "The method is very simple. Under the premise of ensuring the safety of our people, do your best to teach those bastards of the Kingdom of Drow a lesson. You don't need to worry about any consequences, understood?" Duras trembled and his expression turned serious, but there was a trace of excitement in his eyes. "Sir Chairman, you really don't need to worry about any consequences? This is my order, you just need to follow it." Sui nodded. "Good. We'll listen to Sir Chairman's orders." Duras immediately replied in a loud voice. "All right, since you're prepared, let's set off. The colleagues trapped in the Kingdom of Drow are still waiting for your rescue." Sui patted his shoulder as he spoke. Duras replied before turning around and waving his hand at the guards on the field. 3,000 new flyer guards immediately boarded the 10 large transport magic airships that had already been prepared. The large transport magic airships were the new magic airships that the new flyer had developed 3 years ago. These magic airships were 5 times bigger than the first-generation magic airships and had 10 times the carrying capacity. Each transport magic airship could carry over 20 tons of cargo, so it was more than enough to carry 100 guards. After a while, with the 30 small guard magic airships surrounding them, the 10 large transport magic airships took off at the same time, quickly flying into the sky to the east. The new Flight Commerce main base was over 4,000 kilometers away from the Kingdom of Drow. Whether it was by land or sea, it would take at least a week to arrive safely. So this time, Sui had sent half of the large transport magic airships that the new flyer had as transport force. He planned to send troops to the Kingdom of Drow in the shortest amount of time possible to complete this operation. "Sir Chairman, you really don't care about the consequences?" The new flyer's guard Captain Hart came out from behind. Seeing the magic airships that had already turned into black dots in the sky, he revealed a worried look. "You should be very clear on their lethality and destructive power. If they don't care about the consequences, I'm worried. It will create very serious consequences." Sui turned to look at him, and he couldn't help revealing a smile. "Hart, I remember that you were the one with the strongest attitude in the company before. You were even the one who wanted to go to war with the Kanla Empire, so why are you worried about the consequences of going to war with a trivial Kingdom of Drow? This isn't like you at all." Hart smiled awkwardly. "Perhaps it's because the scale of our Chamber of Commerce is much larger than before, and I have more subordinates than before. That's why I have more apprehensions. No, I think that you're older, so it's easier for you to think." Sui shook his head. "I know what you're worried about. You're just afraid that those brats will be too ruthless in the Kingdom of Drow. But you have to understand that this time I want this result." Hart saw the undisguised sharp look in Sui's eyes, and after a bit of silence, he gave a slight nod. "Sir Chairman, you want to give those people a warning through this operation? It can be considered that, but it can also be considered that it isn't," Sui said. "Those fellows from the Kingdom of Drow actually dared to move against our company. If we don't give them a deep enough lesson, how can we let others know that they can't move against our company as they wish? As for the other considerations, it can be considered giving those hesitant fellows a whip to make them move faster." "A whip?" Hart looked at Sui in confusion, not understanding what he meant. Sui laughed and didn't explain. After chatting with Hart for a bit about the arrangements for the guards, Sui left the guard training base and returned to the main office building. As soon as he sat down in his personal office, the office door was suddenly pushed open and Ankado walked in with a face full of indignation. "What's wrong? Why are you so angry?" Sui asked with a smile. Ankado slammed the document in his hand on the table in front of Sui and loudly said, "Sir Chairman, those fellows from the Kanla Empire are simply too much." Sui picked up the document and glanced at it, discovering that it was an official document signed by the governor of the eastern province of the Kanla Empire. "What? Are you dissatisfied with the way the governor of the eastern province handled the incident?" "It's more than dissatisfied." Ankado raised his voice. "I suspect that this accident was caused by them, and then they framed our Chamber of Commerce. The incident the two of them were talking about was naturally the incident caused by the large number of Shinfei brand magic fans that occurred in the eastern province of the Kanla Empire a few days ago. After this incident, the Shinfei Household Magical Machinery Chamber of Commerce that Ankado was the chairman had been contacting the Kanla Empire the entire time, working together to deal with this incident. But he never thought that Ankado would suddenly come over and raise such a shocking guess. However, Sui wasn't that surprised. He looked over the document again and after being silent for a bit, he asked back, "Do you have proof?" Ankado's expression froze as he cursed in a low voice. "If I had proof, I would have already gone knocking on their door. Since you don't have proof, you can't casually say this." Sui warned him with a serious look before taking the document from the table and handing it back to Ankado. "Other than that, don't come looking for me for this kind of small matter in the future. You are the chairman of the Household Magic Machine Company right now, not me. If you come looking for me to solve these things, what would I need you as the chairman for?" "But," Ankado scratched his head and said in a distressed voice, "Sir Chairman, I'm used to listening to your orders." "Then work hard to solve your own problems in the future," Sui said with a serious look. "If you feel that you can't do it, then I will consider finding someone to replace you." Ankado was shocked. He quickly took the document and waved his hand. "I will do it well." After carefully putting away the document, Ankdo looked at Sui. After hesitating for a bit, he hesitantly said, "Yes, sir. That. Sir Chairman, can I ask you for something else?" Chapter 10:21. If you have something to say, then say it. If. Sui paused and swallowed the words, "If you have something to fart," back into his stomach. This. "Sir Chairman, can you ask the Academy of Magic to give us more rights to the household magic machine technology?" Ankado asked. "What? Do you feel threatened?" Sui looked at him with a smile. Ankado coughed lightly and looked a little embarrassed. After a pause, he sighed and nodded honestly, "Yes. Sir Chairman, our new flyer has been around for so many years and has never fallen behind the other companies in terms of technology. But you see, our household magic machine department has just become independent and 3 companies have surpassed us in terms of technology. I can't accept this." "So you want to get back at us in terms of technology?" "Yes." Since he had already said this, Ankdo didn't hesitate anymore. He gave a strong nod and said, "Sir Chairman, those third-grade companies have only made some small innovations, but now they're bragging that they can crush our Frestec Chamber of Commerce in terms of technology. I'm very dissatisfied. And from a practical point of view, this has also affected our household magic machine sales to a certain extent." "Tell me about it." Ankado clearly came prepared as he took out a document and placed it in front of Sui. "Sir Chairman, look, this is our household magic machine department's current order situation. If compared to last year, it has increased by 17%, which can be said to be an increase. But if you look carefully, you will find that the increase this time is clearly lower than the previous few years. This is the data from last year and the year before. It can be found that compared to the year before, Last year's order increase was as high as 31%, but this year's increase is only 17%. No matter how you look at it, there is a problem. So you think that it is because those 3 companies have announced new technology that it has affected our household magic machine sales? Yes. I can't say that it is entirely because of this, but I feel that this is the most important reason, Ankato said with certainty. And what worries me the most is that this will affect our company's image of being number 1 in technology. Sir President, you've always emphasized that technology is the most important factor. Now that other companies have surpassed us in terms of technology, how can that be justified? So you plan to crush them in terms of technology right now and re-establish our leading position in technology? Sui asked. Isn't that natural? Ankato looked at Sui strangely, as if he didn't understand why Sui would even ask such a question. Mr. President, the reason why New Flyer is able to develop so quickly is because we have always been in the lead in terms of technology. If we lose this advantage, do you think our Chamber of Commerce will sink? Sui interrupted him. Ankato opened his mouth and shook his head vigorously. No, I don't think so. I just feel that. Since we have always been in the lead in terms of technology, then we should continue to maintain it. So, let the Academy of Magic give us more access to technology. What do you think? Sui didn't answer. Instead, he picked up the report and looked at it for a while before continuing. I've also paid attention to the new technology that those 3 companies have developed. To be honest, they can't be considered as technological innovations in the true sense. And these technologies have actually been developed by the Academy of Magic a long time ago. They just haven't used them yet. That's why. Ankato looked at Sui with a face full of hidden bitterness. Sir President, why do you insist on not letting us use those new technologies? If you were willing to give us more access, those guys wouldn't have any chance of catching up and wouldn't be able to be so arrogant in front of me. Arrogant in front of you? Sui looked at him with some amusement. He thought that Ankato had just gone to the Lampari Kingdom last week to participate in the Household Magic Machine Technology Exchange Conference that was held twice a year. It was likely that he had been bullied by others at the conference, which was why he was so resentful. What if I told you that I'm purposely not putting these technologies into use because technology needs to be upgraded in stages and it's best not to make too many improvements at once? The most important reason is to let the other companies catch up and surpass us. What would you think? Sui asked with a smile. Ankato opened his eyes wide and looked at Sui with a face full of disbelief. Sir President, didn't you always say that we have to maintain the lead in technology to ensure the status and authority of our Chamber of Commerce? Why are you doing this on purpose? Sui was silent. The reason why he was doing this was actually for the healthy development of the entire industry. If New Flyer continued to maintain the absolute lead in technology, it would be like a huge chasm compared to the other chambers of commerce. Then it would be a huge blow to the enthusiasm of the other chambers of commerce to invest in technology research, which would not be beneficial for the continued development of the industry. Sui knew that just relying on the New Flyer Chamber of Commerce alone would not be able to support the development of the magic machine industry on the continent. Therefore, he had always been doing things in hopes that everyone on the continent would invest in this industry and promote the development of this industry together. But these words could not be said to Ankato. After all, he was the president of the Shinfei Household Magic Machine Chamber of Commerce. From his point of view, he did not need to consider these problems. After thinking for a moment, Sui turned his head to Cindy and said, "Record this and let the Academy of Magic do a technical evaluation. Then let them negotiate with the Household Magic Machine Chamber of Commerce to give them some technical right." Hearing this, Enkato's heart was filled with joy. Sir Chairman, I have another idea that I hope you can listen to. Look, since our household magic machine department is already independent, wouldn't it be inappropriate for us to seek technical support from the Academy of Magic and the Magic Machine Development Center? You mean that you want to establish your own technology research department? Sui narrowed his eyes as he asked this back. Enkato was stunned before saying with a laugh, Sir Chairman, you really are sharp. Yes, I want to establish my own technology research department that specializes in researching household magic machines. The Academy of Magic has too many things to research, so it isn't good to keep bothering them, don't you think? Kid, if you don't want to be restricted by the Academy of Magic, just say it. Beating around the bush like this, do you think I'll believe you? Sui gave a cold snort. Ha! Sir Chairman, I'm just thinking about the future development of the household magic machine department. Sui waved his hand. Just do it if you have an idea. You're already independent, so you don't need to ask for my opinion on everything. Cool. I'm not just asking for your opinion, I'm mainly hoping to obtain your support. Enkato carefully looked at Sui. If possible, can you send a few people from the Academy of Magic to help us? Sui was instantly happy. Kid, you just had an idea and you want to poach people from the Academy of Magic? Do you know how much effort we spent to pull in the researchers from the Academy of Magic? Now you want to leave as soon as you open your mouth? Enkato laughed, but his expression didn't show any signs of backing down. Sir Chairman, we're all members of the company, so there's no need to talk about poaching people, right? If our household magic machine department develops well, we can share a lot of the pressure from the Academy of Magic. You make it sound good. Sui shook his head, leaned back in his chair, and thought for a while before nodding. All right, I have to agree that it's good that you have this idea. Since you're willing to take on more responsibility, then I'll help you. I agree to you setting up a research department and will also have the Academy of Magic provide you with some assistance. But how much assistance will be given will depend on how much you're able to convince Principal Evita. Really? That's great. Enkato excitedly jumped up from his chair and patted his chest. Sir Chairman, don't worry, I'll definitely do my best to run this department. Not only will we not need to rely on the Academy of Magic in the future, we can even use it to help the Academy of Magic's research. All right. Sui nodded with a smile, thinking that this Enkato was quite smart, understanding what he cared about the most. After watching Enkato walk out of the office, Cindy suddenly let out a sigh filled with emotion. I feel more and more that it's natural for us elves to lose to the humans in the race war. Oh? Why do you suddenly say that? Sui asked curiously. Because among our elves, there has never been someone as energetic and creative as him, and he has never been so bold as to make such a request to his superior. It could even be said that. It could be said that he's a bit shameless. Shameless? Sui glanced at where Enkato was sitting and couldn't help but laugh. If Enkato knew that what he did just now was called shameless in Cindy's eyes, who knew what he would think? We elves are too conservative, and we like to do things by the book. Very few of our elves have their own ideas. However, humans are completely different. Almost every human has their own ideas and creativity, which allows humans to develop very quickly. Even if we could win the war 3,000 years ago, we would definitely lose in the future. Cindy continued to express her emotions. I didn't feel this way back when I was in the elves, but after working for you, Sir Chairman, I feel more and more strongly. Is that so? Sui said with a faint smile. This problem doesn't only apply to you elves, it applies to us humans as well. If one day we humans also lose the spirit of innovation, then what awaits us is only elimination. Cindy nodded. Sui looked at the closed office door and recalled everything that happened today. A bitter smile suddenly appeared on his face. But Cindy, sometimes too much energy and creativity may not bring good things. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.